You're watching HALENVILLE Live with Fruitcake Tony. Woo!
All right, we have made it to the dance. It is Tuesday night, June the 20th, 2023. We're off and running. Fruitcake Tony, Brendan B. Squared, Charles Green, along with our friend Donnny Ward. What's going on, Donnny?
How you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Good to see you, man.
Very good. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a good one.
How's things going for you, dude?
Oh, busy. I couldn't tell you guys half of what I've been up to. It would take the whole show. But lots of guitars getting made, bodies, necks, full guitars, just cool stuff. Keep an eye out because there's some stuff coming out that's going to be kind of big that I'm going to be involved in. So we can talk about it off air, but everybody keep an eye out.
Nice. Absolutely. It's good to see you, dude. We're going to unearth the Bumblebee tonight, right here.
We've done about the Frankenstrat. We've done the Shark. We've done the 5150. It's the Bee's turn.
It is. We hope we do the instrument justice. We will be covering all aspects of it before night's end, and we have a surprise special guest with a little twist, but we'll get there. It is great to see everybody. This is HALENVILLE Live. If you're new here, we talk Van Halen every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. right here on YouTube. Thanks for being here. All right, so before we move any further, let's open up the chat, guys, and see who's here.
Yeah, open it up. There's already 22 people in there watching.
With us. Boom. I'm going to start at the bottom with our friend, our Van Halen brother, R2, R3 Lock and Nut in the house. Good to see you, dude. Joe Hervey, 84 in the house. Good to see you, Joe. Tim Thomas is here.
Tim.
What's up, Def?
Hey, Def.
Good to see you. Welcome. All right. Let me scroll. Jimmy Ray Hawkins, what's up, man? Good to see you. Guitar Man 45. Kurt 5150 in the house. Dan of New Jersey right behind him. Let me scroll up. All right. If you're just jumping in, say hello. There's Papa Blue.
It's good to see Papa.
Good to see you, man. He's always at the top somewhere.
See Jeff K popped in.
All right. Nice to see Jeff.
Right on, Jeff.
All right.
There's our machine shop dude, so Christopher Live Silva popping in.
What's up, Chris? Good to see you.
Right on, Mr. Silva.
Cool.
All right, Rockin' Rob's in the house. Good to see him.
Right on, Rob.
All right, so tonight we're gonna do some nearly impossible Van Halen trivia with a twist, and we're going to give you Vestige Guitars custom Bumblebee neck.
That's awesome.
Courtesy
I'm gonna go be in the chat so I can win.
Courtesy of
Right
that
on.
guy. Thank you,
Yeah.
Donnny.
My
There
pleasure.
you
Donnny.
My pleasure, my friends.
There
Very
you go.
Very kind of you.
Yeah. So what we're going to do for trivia later on is we're going to ask you 3 questions. Okay. Whoever has the most after 3 nearly impossible Van Halen questions will be the winner.
Mm-hmm.
Very
Best
cool.
out of 3.
Best out of 3.
Yep.
It's a big one, guys.
That is a big one.
Very cool, man. That's must-have gear right there. That's a quality neck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's my pleasure.
All right. So I must ask you, Donnny, we all of us associate the Bumblebee with Van Halen 2,
Right.
1979. When did this guitar actually show up?
So, in the immediate entry-level understanding is it comes from a 1980 interview where Ed says, we were just about to shoot the album cover and I slapped the guitar together. I just finished it and I built it. So there's this narrative that Ed did this himself and he gets it together right in time for the photo shoot for the second album. So everyone thinks this is a 1979 guitar. That's not the case. So, and we'll go into all these details when we rewind and come back through the history. But Ed got the guitar in late summer, early fall 1978. And there's a photo of it being delivered to him. There are photos of him playing it on tour in Europe in 1978. So he had it long before then. And I think the reality of that interview was that he probably did just reinstall everything and get the guitar together because he was probably taking stuff off, maybe a different neck, maybe a different pickup, because he wasn't happy with it yet. But in reality, he did not paint the guitar. He did not assemble it. It was done all in-house at Charvel and delivered to him turnkey. So the story goes back further than that because we're going to get into all the details of how Grover Jackson came to own Charvel and how this guitar was manufactured, the process that went into it, some of the people involved. And our special guests, when we get to that point, will kind of be able to give us some insight of that process. But you're right. Most people associate this guitar with 1979 being its inception, when in fact that guitar was used on tour in 1978 and was theoretically available to record Van Halen 2, though most of us believe it was not, given what Ed felt about it at the time and what he was doing to experiment. So it's got a richer and more, as with anything in this community, the real answer is that the history is deeper, more rich and interesting than the surface level understanding. And we're going to get into all that as we proceed.
Nice.
Right on.
That's what's good about the community and stories like that, because you're Van Halen fans for years and years and years. You think you know it all. You're like, wait, there's more. And then you're always learning, and it's so awesome. Even however many years, 30, 40 years later, you're like, I didn't know that.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, things that for the people who have seen the show where we were on talking about the Frankenstrat and the Shark, things that we come to discover about these guitars and kind of learn about them and make all these assumptions to try to get to the bottom of things. Some things turn out to not quite be true. Some things that turn out to be half true. And we, even as people researching this stuff, have to reinvent our understanding because these are really enigmatic guitars. They're very. It's hard to follow the history because Ed was secretive about it, and he did so much. He was constantly swapping stuff and trying new things. So it's very difficult to actually follow the chain, aside from just ripping apart every picture we have and looking for every little detail and kind of putting it together in our minds. So for that reason, it's an evergreen community where we're always learning new things and kind of have something interesting to think about. So it's great.
Even Ed contradicts himself in the Yah Sobrick interviews and Guitar Player magazine and the the tapes.
Yep.
79 through 82. he contradicts himself on the Bumblebee, on pickups, things of that nature.
Yep.
I was curious. My question I was going to ask you was, is any of that guitar used on Van Halen 2?
It could be, but we don't believe it was. Just because of, and this, you really get into the weeds because you're starting to get to the point where you're using your ear to try to say, what kind of pickup are we hearing? Not that we even know what pickup was in it, but we can assume. So it's hard to tell. Probably not, because we know he was experimenting with swapping pickups in and out, and he wasn't really satisfied with the guitar yet. So given that he wasn't satisfied with it, I don't see him, and other people who are in this kind of research community kind of agree, we don't see him using the guitar on record because it wasn't there yet.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But you're right about the jazz interviews. Sorry to jump back in. The jazz interviews, I was astounded when he started releasing all the audios. I didn't know how many tapes there actually were. And I think it was 2 or 3 times that Jazz went back and interviewed him and got it all on tape. And over one session, he contradicts himself. That session compared to the previous session, there are contradictions. And then future interviews talking about topics that were covered on the previous ones all contradict. So Ed, we know he lied about things such as the Variac and other similar things. We know he forgot things. And, you know, as time went on, he kind of invented his own narrative that he wanted to be the case, even though it necessarily wasn't. So with that said, the interviews are a great starting point, but you never end the inquiry at this is what Ed said, or what anyone said for that matter. You need, but especially Ed, because he was exceedingly unreliable.
He may have embellished things a little.
Yes.
Yeah. Nice about it.
But my favorite is when he would constantly say that he took a chainsaw to his Destroyer. That's how he would describe the Shark. As I took a chainsaw to it, which is okay.
That's what we all hear.
Not a chance. No.
Well, Donnny.
Go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
We saw that first on the album shoot for Van Halen 2.
Yep.
And in another year's time, we didn't see it anymore.
Well, you saw it for all of the 79 tour following. And it had a brief stint in 1980 on tour. But we get to a point where there's something going on in the background. Now, Ed in the future would claim that he hassled with the guitar, he couldn't get it to sound right, what have you. To me, and this is where we get in the weeds, because you're making assumptions about his intent and all of this, but we know Ed was deeply troubled by what was happening at Charvel. So to take a step back, I touched on this. This was a full turnkey build from Charvel. I'm talking, they got the body and neck, they painted it, they assembled it, they striped it themselves at Charvel, just kind of like his first one, but there's some variances compared to the original Frank. Installed everything, set it up, delivered it to him. So Ed didn't have any hand in putting this together or painting it.
Are we talking about the original black headstock that said Charvel on it?
That's
Donnny?
right. That's right.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to.
Sir. So that was a turnkey build given to him by Charvel, meaning they had the resources to continue to do guitars like this. So what you saw a lot of in 78, 79 were companies that had been working with Ed in some capacity, sold him a body, sold him a neck, worked on his pickups. They're now starting to say, because Van Halen's blowing up and Eddie Van Halen's huge in the guitar community, these people such as Seymour Duncan, Grover Jackson, through Charvel, they're starting to say this is the Eddie Van Halen model pickup. This is the Eddie Van Halen model guitar. Ed didn't approve of any of this, and Ed got nothing from this. So Ed was very protective, being an up-and-coming act who, in all rights, should have protected this. So he was very upset when he saw Grover Jackson immediately during the pre-production era. I'm talking before Charvels were serialized. They're making guitars just like this one with a different stripe pattern, but just like this one. Single hum, tremolo, crossing yellow stripes on a black background. And they were, I believe, $900 or $1,000, which if you adjust for the value of the dollar since 1978, comes out to almost like $3,500 or $4,000 value of a guitar that Charvel was getting off of Ed's name. Ed didn't like this. So this is ongoing. 78. I mean, as soon as the B gets made, Grover Jackson's doing this. Goes through 78, goes through 79. Ed keeps asking him to stop. He says, dude, like, I don't want my name on this. We don't have an agreement. And my understanding from reading Ed's interviews, and again, we just talked about how he's unreliable, but this is what he said. Grover kept saying, okay, I'll stop. I'm sorry. Like, I don't need to do it anymore. I won't make any more. But then Ed would keep catching him doing more. More would come out. He'd see him at a NAMM show. So fast forward to 1980, Ed has used the B on the first world tour, pretty much all of the second world tour. And we'll get into the specifics about its usage and kind of how that came in. And for the first section of the third tour, the Women and Children First tour, he's using it sporadically. The last time it's ever seen used in his hands is at Pink Pop 1980. And the story goes that Ed saw at some NAMM show, I guess it would have been summer if our timeline is right, a summer NAMM show, he sees Grover Jackson, and he's at a NAMM show, he sees the Grover Jackson Charvel booth, and there are these bees up. And Ed intentionally showed up unannounced so that Grover didn't have time to hide everything, which is what Ed suspected he would do. So he shows up unannounced. He sees them. Allegedly, there's a big blow up at NAMM. Again, this is just things I've heard. I can't confirm this one way or another, but there's a big blow up at this NAMM show. And Ed goes back and disassembles the B and never uses it again. He figures the best way he can handle the situation is to distance himself from the guitar and do other things. So that's when we go to Ed putting a Floyd Rose on the Frankenstrat for the first time, because prior to this, the Bumblebee was his like test platform for the Floyd Rose system, which is very new. It wasn't proven. He was experimenting with it, but he wasn't sure yet. So the Bumblebee was his backup guitar, but he liked the Floyd concept so much that the Bumblebee was used a lot on the second world tour. But with this whole blow up, he couldn't use it anymore. So he takes the leap to putting his first Floyd on the Frankenstrat. So that's when we moved to the Frankenstrat, unequivocally becoming the number one guitar. Now, everything else is like a backup. It's a emergency guitar, but the Frank becomes number one. Wow. So that's why the B disappears, and that's why I feel Ed would, in the future, talk about how bad it sounded and how he couldn't get it to sound right. He wanted people to associate it with not being a good guitar because Grover Jackson was profiting off of it against his wishes. So that's kind of the background on like the drama between Charvel and Ed, and how basically a grudge that probably went to the grave started. I mean, I believe that Ed and Grover never made up. That's my understanding, is that they never reconciled these differences. And
interesting on the timeline on that, Donnny. I'd never thought about it from the aspect that he counterfeited his guitars for 2 whole years.
Yeah. And
then was displaying them in a NAMM show. I'd heard about the story about the NAMM show.
Right.
So puts it in perspective. I believe
yeah. Yeah. Well, so some of the things you wonder why he stops using a guitar that he's been using for a long time. Ed wasn't the type to jump around to guitars. When he found something he liked and it worked, that was his guitar. Like we see how he used the Frankenstrat. In the beginning, he was experimenting, so it was sporadic. But once he settled on the Frank, that was his guitar for albums, live, everything. Then when he goes to the 5150, same thing. I mean, in studio, he'll use like a Strat for single coil tones, or like the 58V, for example. But live every night was that 5150 guitar for 8-9 years. So Ed wasn't the type to jump around on guitars. So it makes you wonder what caused him to stop using one of his main guitars. And then you look at the timeline of the NAMM show, the pre-pro Charvel thing with the stripes, and you look at Ed's attitude towards the B, not at all reflecting his actions. If that guitar was really that problematic for him and it wouldn't play right and wouldn't feel right, why would he use it on 3 world tours? It just doesn't make sense. So we are making a lot of assumptions about what Ed felt, and we're trying to get into his mind a bit. But what his story about things doesn't really match his actions and how he behaves with other guitars. So you put everything in perspective, and there's other answers.
That's awesome.
It's a very, very interesting and rich history that is, like we said, it's constantly evolving because we don't know for sure the answers to these questions, but these are our best understanding of how we got from point A to point B. But lots of discoveries that we've made about Ed's entire kind of chasing this thing that he was trying to get involves the B around that time, including the Floyd Rose. The B was the first guitar to get a Floyd Rose. So the story, to rewind a little bit, we start the Second World Tour in 1979, and Ed has the Frank, which he just painted red. He brings it out like for the first several shows. I think it was like kind of disassembled, and he's using guitars like the Star before it was painted, the Snake, and a couple other guitars here and there. Then he comes out with the Frankenstrat, which he just painted red. That's March 79, so like the first month of the tour. You get to April, and the guys go through Seattle. Now, Lynn Ellsworth, the last time I was on the show, Lynn Ellsworth was a guest with me. Lynn was the founder of Boogie Bodies. He made Ed's bodies and necks, and just was incomparably important to Ed's chasing of this early guitar building thing. Lynn knew Floyd Rose because Floyd was in the Seattle area and Lynn was in the same general area at the time, and they're guitar building types. They knew one another, and Lynn knew Ed would be into the Floyd because he knew kind of what Ed did and his tremolo usage and whatnot. So Lynn introduces the two of them when he goes to Seattle. So Ed comes and sees Lynn, and Lynn said this on the show. Lynn got them in touch, and they went and did their thing. He wants to try this Floyd Rose system, which, by the way, we believe is the third Floyd Rose ever made. So there was two non-fine tuning Floyd Roses, the ones pre-fine tuners. Two of them were made for Randy Hansen, the Hendrix impersonator guy, and the reason Randy got them is because Floyd Rose was a sound engineer at the place where Randy gigged a lot. So Floyd Rose kind of became Randy's sound man, and he had been experimenting with this Floyd Rose concept. And Randy's the perfect guy for that, being a Hendrix guy doing crazy dive bombs. So Floyd makes the first unit and the second unit, and Randy gets those. And we believe Ed gets the third one. Now, there's stories about Brad Gillis getting an early one, and everyone claims I have the first, second, third, fourth, fifth. The evidence we have in the timeline suggests that either end of 78 or early 79, Randy gets the first two, and then Ed gets number 3 in April 79, which is exceedingly early for a U.S. Floyd Rose. Yeah, I see in the chat. Neil Sean is another one who got an early one.
These are non-fine tuning, Donnny. Is that correct?
Yeah. Okay. So the earliest ones, it's just a plate with a bent tail, like a regular tremolo, but it's got the 6, fixed saddles with the locking screw just to lock.
You have no locking nut.
You have a locking nut, but no.
You do have one. Okay.
Right. So what the downfall with that, and Ed experienced this, and we can kind of touch on the evolution of this later, but the downfall is that if this neck shifts, if you get clamped down and tune, you're good. It's not going to go anywhere. But if this neck shifts when you're jumping around on stage and you land, it shifts down, you're out of tune, and you can't do anything about it. You can't tune up. You can't unlock the nut in the middle of the song. You're just screwed. So anyway, this is very early Floyd stuff, and Ed didn't necessarily trust it yet because it's the third one ever made, or he may or may not have known that, but he knew it was an early concept. And Floyd was just saying, I can make this for you, and here's how it works. So he gets the Floyd on the B instead. The problem is the B didn't have a locking nut. It was a standard.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Like mine. Yeah. At the time, the B doesn't have a locking nut yet. It looks like this. And we'll show some pictures later of this configuration of the guitar. But when he's with Floyd, Floyd installs the bridge on the body, but he doesn't have a neck for it. So then he orders a neck from Lynn while he's there and says, hey, I need a neck to fit this Floyd thing. Now, because Lynn knew Floyd, they were working together on like templates and jigs to retrofit guitar bodies for the unit, including routing them down. So Lynn made the first necks that were already like prepared for a Floyd Rose. I don't know if he was taking a neck and routing it out or making it like from the beginning for a Floyd Rose, but he makes a neck for Ed. That takes time for Lynn. Ed says, I need a neck. Ed's on tour. Lynn needs to make the neck and then get it to him. When is Ed going to get the neck? He's not going to go back to Seattle. He's on tour. So, and on the show with Lynn, we talked about this, and Lynn kind of agreed with what our interpretation was, and it kind of fit his memory. They go through Seattle. All this stuff happens. He gets a Floyd Rose bridge on the B, but he can't use it yet because he doesn't have a neck. He places the order for a neck with Lynn. Lynn has to make it. Ed goes off, and he's touring with the Frank as his guitar through April and May, and I think just April and May, because by June, and I don't remember the date off the top of my head, but sometime maybe like mid-June, they go to Europe. And the first day they're in Europe, Ed has the B with a locking nut on. So our interpretation of how this went down is Lynn's making the neck, Ed's out touring for the next 2 months. Lynn delivers or mails the guitar to Ed's home. Ed comes home from tour to prepare, finishing the US leg to go to the European leg. And he gets the neck. He has some time to kind of rip this apart and put the new neck on with the locking nut and set everything up. And then he heads to Europe with the B and the Frankenstrat. Those are the 2 guitars he brings to Europe. That he may have had the Star, but the only guitars we see him playing in Europe is the B with the Floyd for the first time in June of 1979. So the B is absolutely integral to Ed moving to the Floyd. Now, if it wasn't the B, would it have been a different guitar? Sure. But the point is, this was the guitar that Ed learned how to use a Floyd Rose and learned the concept of how it would fit with his playing. And that's all through, like I said, April 79 is when the body gets retrofit. Through June is when he gets the neck and gets everything installed. Through the rest of the tour, this is his main guitar for 79 because that Floyd is so important to his live performance.
Donnny, quick question. The pickup. I know that the Bumblebee had several pickups. Going back to the Obrecht interview, said, quoting him, he put several in there. Some of them were just garbage, but he put them in. He also brags about making his own pickup. And my question is what pickup was primarily in the Bumblebee during its heyday?
Okay, so the time when the guitar is being played the most and has the most presence in Ed's arsenal is on the 79 tour, and that's a Super Distortion. Or it could be a Mighty Mite 1300, but they look the same. I'm trying to, as we're talking, I'm trying to pull up a picture I have that will show me if it's a Super Distortion. I believe it's a Super Distortion.
Is it the all black Super Distortion, or wasn't the Zebra?
Cream. It's cream. The first pickup that came with the guitar was Zebra, and we don't know what that was, but that was from when Charvel made it. It had this cream pickup in it, probably a Mighty Mite or something like that. I think Mighty Mite sold them, and Charvel's would have primarily had Super DiMarzio pickups, but they were always cream, and maybe they weren't always cream, but they were typically cream, as we know. And then Mighty Mite as well. Charvel was getting all these parts, so it could have been the Zebra one. We're not sure, but Ed never really used it like that. You never see it with that. It has what looks like a PAF or PAF style humbucker in it. And when we get to the picture section, we'll talk more about those.
That's the one that he cooks in the wax, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a good point. The wrinkled one is a DiMarzio PAF, because DiMarzio pickups, as Ed said in interviews, were the ones that would shrivel up when you would try to wax spot them because they had cheap plastic. And other pickups like the PAF, like the actual Gibson PAF, would not wrinkle. They could handle the heat, but the DiMarzios would instantly shrivel up when you put them in that heat. So that's right. The double black we see on the B, when we get to the pictures, we'll point it out. But the double black we see is a DiMarzio PAF that would later go in the Frank.
Gotcha.
Oh, Jerry just posted in chat. That's right. The Zebra pickup that came in the guitar was the one that was still in the guitar when he was playing in Europe in 1978. So the Zebra one did make it to the point where he played it live in that first test run in Europe in late 78. So it is relevant to, but we don't know. I don't think that we have any real lead on what it for sure might be. I'm still digging for this to tell you if it's a Mighty Mite 1300 or a Super Distortion, but I'm fairly certain it's a Super Distortion that was on the second tour. Mm-hmm. So that essentially covers the major points of the history of the B, because after we get to Ed disassembling it, it's never really used again in any meaningful capacity. It's seen in late 1981, early 1982 on the floor with no neck, and the PAF that came out of Ed's 58 Burst So the 58 burst he's playing in 1980 that's missing the neck pickup, that went in the Frankenstrat at one point, but then it also went into the B, and it probably wasn't used because we just see the body laying there with the pickup. But so it was kind of kicking around and like, it was there, but it doesn't have any meaningful relevance to Ed's history past that disassembly date in 1980.
Right. So,
go ahead.
What do we know about the guitar before Ed got it?
Well,
its history.
That's tough because a lot of people that were involved and were there and would know all claim different things. Grover will tell you he did everything. Grover will tell you he built the body and neck and painted it and assembled it, and basically no one else was involved. Carl Sandoval will tell you, and I believe, by the way, I don't really believe that Grover's story, as I just explained it, if that's his current position, is believable. Carl Sandoval will tell you he had a lot of involvement, but he's not necessarily totally clear on what he did. I think he said that he did some setup and maybe part of the assembly, but he's never really straight cut clear. This is what I did. I painted it. No, I didn't paint it. I assembled it. No, I didn't assemble it. It's just a bunch of question marks. Other people, I don't have their names off the top of my head, but people who would have been there at Charvel at the time who have weighed in. One person says, I think Carl says Wayne painted it. Someone else says Grover painted it. You might think Carl painted it, but Carl says someone else painted it. So, why would he not take credit for painting the guitar if he did? So, unfortunately, we don't know a whole lot. We just know that it was made in-house to a spec for Ed. It's speculated that, and this is just, when I say speculation, it's pure speculation, but it's speculated that this whole concept of the B was started between Wayne and Ed, because Wayne and Ed were close. And they would have, Ed would have been totally on board with Wayne doing Ed was going to endorse, he was going to endorse Charvel, but then Wayne had to sell. And that's a whole different story that we'll get into when we bring our guest in and talk about the next section of this. Ed would have been totally down and have endorsed Charvel if Wayne stayed involved. But during the production of this guitar, Wayne had to step further and further back and eventually sell the company, and he sold it to Grover Jackson. Grover was the one who was working there, who was willing to step up and pay to have the company in his name. Now, the speculation, sorry to step back, the speculation is that this whole concept was started between Wayne and Ed. And over time, we don't know when or what point, but we got to a certain point where it kind of takes over and Grover becomes the primary involvement in the build of the guitar. Now, in terms of what parts were used, that's another contentious issue, and that's where our guest is going to come in to give his experience on this, and we're going to kind of step back and look at the history of some of the companies that were around. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of unknown. Before the guitar gets in Ed's hands, it's really a lot is up in the air.
Right.
That's a good question, Tony.
Is this a good time to bring in our special guest, Donnny? Is this a good?
Probably, yeah. We can touch on what happened to the guitar at the end of its life later in the show, but I think maybe it's time to bring our guest in.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us, Donnny? Me and you, we talked about this show for a while now, and I asked you who would be the perfect guest on this, and explain a little bit why this is going to be the perfect guest.
Well, this fellow is very interesting, and I think you guys, most people will not may even know some inkling of him, but not be aware of all the things he was involved in. That was my take, especially. He came to me to do some work, build some necks, do some guitar building stuff, and he came by the shop a couple times, and we'd have nice, like really interesting, long conversations. He's got a great intuition for what happened and what Ed was experimenting with, and he has a lot of personal experience with all of the players involved in these companies at the time because he was right in the thick of it. He a personal experience with the companies. Schecter is the main one. He used to hang out at Dr. Music, where Ed would shop and get his stuff. And I'm sure he's got an incredible story about that he'll share. But this guy was in the thick of it from the early days of Van Halen, though he was still kind of coming up and, didn't have my understanding, didn't have a huge presence on the Strip at that time. But then later started playing with bands on the Strip, and just great stories that don't even pertain to the B that we could talk about for hours on here. But my instinct was that he was the perfect guy because he has a one particular very interesting insider bit of information that is kind of hard to ignore, especially when you step back and kind of compare who could have made this body. We know who made the neck, but who could have made this body? Grover could have made it. Perhaps he probably knew how to build bodies by that point, but maybe not. Did Lynn Ellsworth build it? Because Lynn Boogie Bodies was sending parts down. Charvel was also a Schecter distributor. They had a lot of Schecter stuff that they used. Mostly bodies, I think. I don't know if Charvel distributed a lot of Schecter necks, but bodies and like pick guards and stuff like that. So who made the body? What you look at the shape and everything, try to compare it to who made bodies that look certain ways, who best fits this description. And our guest has a direct personal experience with one of the manufacturers who it's kind of hard to deny this, especially when you take it into account and go compare all the options. So for me, he was the perfect guest, and you guys will love his stories.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Let's bring him in then. Let's go back to there. Ladies and gentlemen, Ray Hinckley. There he is.
All right.
What's up, dude?
Am I too close?
Hey, man.
What's up, bro?
Surprise.
Hey.
Welcome, man.
How you doing?
Excellent. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
It is a party now.
Yes, sir.
Let's change it up.
Was my introduction appropriate, Ray?
Yeah.
I didn't lay it on too thick.
No, I was like, ooh, who's this gonna be? I'm excited.
Yeah.
Ray, it's good to see you, man. Thanks for being here.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
And good to meet Brendan and Charles too.
Man, it's great to meet you, Ray.
And
Yeah, man.
always
to hear some
great.
stories, brother.
Always great to see Donnny.
Yes, sir. When you're done out there, you got to get back to the shop.
Yeah. I gotta do the Megazone paint for you.
Yes, you do. That thing's been. I've shown that on this show before. It's been sitting around forever because I don't feel like painting it. And Ray's the crazy motherfucker who will paint it for me.
Yeah, it'll be great.
It looks
Hello.
great.
All right.
I'm sure we all have questions for Ray.
There's Donald. Yeah.
Donald.
So, Ray,
Yeah.
you're a lifelong musician. You've told me and Ray got to know each other a little bit in the past week or so, getting ready for this. And Ray, you were in rock bands in LA in the mid '80s.
Yeah, early to mid '80s. Yeah,
Right
and
on.
late '80s. Yeah.
Nice.
A crazy time to be in a band, huh?
It was the best, man. It was the absolute best.
It must have been.
Ray, what's the first club you played as a musician in a band?
Okay, well, the first Hollywood club that I ever played was the Troubadour on Santa Monica Boulevard.
Nice.
And then we did some parties, like backyard parties in the dirt.
They were very popular in California in those days.
Yeah,
Yes,
they were. Those were fun too. You know what I mean? People get crazy.
After Van Halen came through, everyone realized that's how you got to start because you got to be like Van Halen in every way.
Yeah, because it sounded
exactly
like so
right.
much fun. I mean, we were doing our first backyard party was in Northern California, but
Quite a drive.
yeah, well, it was right after high school. I went to high school in Northern California.
Oh, okay.
Went to grammar and junior high in Arcadia, California. Was born in Pasadena.
Okay.
And so I hung out at my grandmother's house a lot, who remained in Pasadena. And yep, that's where it all started.
You were right in the nuclear zone of that atomic bomb.
Yeah. One of the very first rock albums I ever bought was Kiss Alive 1 in 1975. And at that time, where I bought that record was at Warehouse Records that shared a wall with Dr. Music on the corner of Rosemead and Foothill.
Nice.
And
wow, that's right downtown.
Yeah, it's kind of bordering Hastings Ranch, but it was walking distance from my grandmother's house. So, and
you used to go in the music store often, also, though, right?
Oh, all the time. That and Sound Chamber, both. And because my dad was an electrician in Pasadena, and he worked around there, and so I would go into the Sound Chamber and check their stuff out, and Dr. Music also. And Dr. Music was the first time I ever put my hands on a Ibanez Destroyer. And I was attracted to that guitar because I was into Kiss, and Ace Frehley played one.
Mm-hmm.
So
one of the earliest ones Ace had.
Yeah. And so I liked Ace Frehley, and I wanted to play the guitar like him. And so there was two of them, and I played both of them. When I say played, I didn't really play guitar yet. I would just mess around trying to figure things out. Very, very remedial. My parents had a Harmony acoustic guitar, and the strings were about 12 feet off the neck, so I couldn't even form a chord. I was like, man, if you gotta use two hands to fret a chord, how are you gonna pick? You know? And so these guitars the action was quite a bit better, you know. And like I said, I didn't really know how to play guitar, but I still wanted to hold it and try and mess around with it. And the people, now I say it was Dr. Music, but very well it could have been the Sound Chamber. If we're voting democratically, I'm way outvoted. But I was super young, and
let's be Republican and rewind us. So you said two Ibanez Destroyers on the wall?
And I got to play both of them.
And this was 1975, so this is like the earliest Destroyers.
1975.
Wow.
And I didn't even know that Gibson Explorer was around. That's how much I didn't know about the cars yet. And so I just saw the shape. If they'd have had a Gibson Explorer, I probably would have seen that until I inspected the headstock and said, "Oh, this isn't the same exact one."
Yeah.
At the time I saw the Destroyer, I thought, you know, for a while I thought Gibson copied. But we know.
If you say it enough times, it becomes true.
Yeah. So, and then after a point, they were gone. And so when we were playing in Hollywood, years later, so that was 75.
So in 75, Ray, you weren't really playing guitar yet? Is that what you said? You hadn't really learned to play yet?
I wanted to play, but I didn't know how. So I was kind of just messing around with things, and you know, even though I didn't know how to play, I still wanted to hold the thing.
Sure, absolutely.
That's the first step.
Wanting to play.
I wanted to see how cool I looked in the windows reflection.
See if you look like Ace. Yeah.
But and then they were gone, I didn't know what happened to him. And then years later, probably about 87, 88 maybe, Chris Holmes from Wasp used to come to our show at Gazzari's, mostly Gazzari's. He was at one of the whiskey shows too, but mostly at Gazzari. And he was up there backstage, and we were talking. This was before decline of the Western civilization, where he became, he got his notoriety. But he was a great guy, and we were talking, and he said he was from Pasadena, and we started talking about certain things. We were both kind of drinking, you know. But anyway, so we started talking, and I mentioned Dr. Music, and like I said, many people have come out and said no, it's Sound Chamber. But anyway, I remember saying Dr. Music, and he didn't object to me. So maybe he didn't, you know, maybe I was mumbling or something. Anyway, but I said, yeah, I used to go in there and play the Ibanez Destroyers in there, play around with it. And he told me that's where he got his. But he said that Ed bought one, and then he said he had to rush in and buy the second one because he was afraid Ed was going to buy that one too.
Knew it.
And
yeah.
So he didn't want to lose out. You know what I mean? And I said, oh, I never saw him again. So I played the one you got, and the one.
So
Ed
you
got.
played these off the wall every other day as a kid? No shit.
Well, not every other day, but you know, once every other week or whatever. Whenever I'd go in there, that's the one that I wanted to hold and try and mess around with. And you know what? I think about it, and the employees at the music stores were very accommodating. You know, I mean, back then, I mean, it's still an expensive guitar, even if it was less than the Gibson Explorers, you know? I mean, I think someone said in that they were like $235 or something like that. I mean, to me, that was more money than, you know, I couldn't collect enough cans for that. So, and they were gone. He goes, and I never saw any more in there. So I'm thinking those are the two, you know?
That makes sense.
What's up, Jay?
And for all these years, I swear, I thought it was Dr. Music because I was in there all the time. But Chris has said Sound Chamber. Everyone that's been involved has said Sound Chamber. So I was in both stores, so it could have been Sound Chamber.
Right.
Here we are years later, the guitars that recorded half of Van Halen 1, a song or two on Van Halen 2, and then Chris's, which recorded half of Women and Children First.
Thank you.
You were in there playing both as a kid.
Wow.
And you know, I heard you guys talking about the B earlier, and there is an interview. I can't. It's the audio interview with Jazz or Steve Rosen, and Ed is talking about using the B to record parts of Women and Children First.
It's Steve Rosen, Ray.
It is Steve Rosen. Okay.
So that interview. Now, maybe there is a separate part that I'm not remembering, but I didn't touch on this. We can almost for sure confirm that the B was used on Women and Children First because there's a Floyd Rose on Women and Children First. And it's the Steve Rosen interview where he's explaining in detail, oh yeah, I got this Floyd Rose tremolo thing, and this is how I use it. And he's picking behind the nut. The only guitar that he had that had a Floyd on it as of tracking was the B. So I don't know, and maybe you're right and I'm forgetting. I don't know that he explicitly said I used the B in the interview, but he explained that he used the Floyd, which means he must have used the B.
Well, because he was saying and I'll go back and listen to that interview again. But I remember, because I rewound it, I was like, oh, I didn't realize that. Because he was talking about his main guitar.
The Frank.
And he said, it's the black and yellow one. And they
Okay,
said, yeah.
I got to hear that because I've never that would be great.
Yeah. And he says that I use that my main guitar to record a lot of the latest record on. And I think that interview was before Women and Children First was released.
Yes. The preliminary tracks were done. Now, if this is the same interview and there's snippets I'm missing, to add to that, part of the perspective of the Floyd Rose thing proving that the B was on the record is that in the same interview where Ed is telling Steve, hey, this Floyd Rose thing works like this and this is how I used it, he then goes on to say, I'm in the process of building my second guitar with the Floyd Rose. So he both confirms that he used a Floyd and confirms that he only had one guitar with a Floyd at the time of tracking. Because you hear the tracks in the interview, like you hear him start and kind of like he played all the tracks for Steve, the rough tracks. I think it was just instruments. I don't know if the vocals were even there or if they were rough or what. But he's doing the Tora thing where he's picking behind the nut and then doing the huge dive bombs and then the reverse. Yeah. And then, of course, Everybody Wants Some as a Floyd all over the place. You can tell it's a Floyd and not a regular trem. So that alone proves that the B was on Women and Children First. But we don't feel that it was on Van Halen 2 because we think he was still trying to experiment. It still had this trim, which I didn't talk about yet because we haven't talked about the specific parts yet. But the trim that was on it as of Van Halen 2 was a 70s CBS pot metal tremolo. When CBS Fender moved from the solid steel block that was screwed on, they had these pot metal trims where the plate and the block were one piece of cast pot metal and then plated chrome. Oh, so unlike a normal tremolo where you can take the saddles off and unscrew the block, it's all one piece of metal, the plate and the block, and it's cast and then plated. So anyway, he had a tremolo on it that probably he didn't think that highly of. However, he would then put that on the Frankenstrat for a year. So maybe he did. I don't know. He was experimenting with the B, so it feels to me unlikely that he was using it on Van Halen 2, but we can almost confirm that once he got the super distortion in there, had the Floyd Rose and was used to it, that was on Women and Children First.
Yeah, and I never put that together.
What would that body have been made of?
This is an ash body.
Okay.
We think. I mean, he said in interviews that it was ash, and we don't really have any reason to believe it was something else because that's what was being used.
Northern hard ash.
Northern hard ash. Yeah, people weren't really using swamp ash at the time. They felt heavy and robust was the way to go. So that's what they were all made of.
So then, like I said, this is before I was into Kiss, and then I graduated from Kiss to other bands, and once Van Halen 1 dropped, I just said, okay, I need to take lessons because I need to, not that I'll ever figure out how he's doing this stuff, but I got to try, it was that inspiring, I'd never heard anything like it. Cool. And I don't think anyone else had ever heard anything like it. And so now in interviews and stuff, he was talking about Wayne Charvel and stuff like that. Well, when I was taking lessons at this one music store, and they had, they sold parts and stuff for, replacement parts and stuff for guitars. They had a whole wall full of that kind of stuff, jacks and jack plates and,
they had all the aftermarket gear.
Yeah.
The Mighty Might stuff, basically.
Yeah. And so one day, the owner of the store brought this guy in, and he said, hey, I want to introduce you to this guy. And I was like, okay. And he says, this is the guy that built Van Halen's guitar that was on the first record. Now, this is January of '79. So they only have that record out. It's still the debut, right? So
only just.
I said, and he goes, yeah, his name's Dave Schecter. And in my mind, I'm going, oh boy, I don't recognize that name. This guy's not Wayne Charvel. you know? And he goes, yeah, I did that. And so, and he goes, and I just finished one for the new record that'll be coming out shortly. And he says, and then he goes out to his car and he brings in this guitar body. And he goes, it's just like this, and holds it up. And so it's a front routed humbucker pickup with the rear route electronics cavity. And he goes, it's Northern Hard Ash. And I was like, okay, I don't know what that means. That meant nothing to me at the time. But I had worked with my dad over the summer. He was an electrical contractor, and I'd saved some money. And plus I had some Christmas money too. So, and I had a Hondo 2 Les Paul, you know, but I wanted to something similar to what Ed had, you know, with the pick guard and all that stuff. But anyway, he had this with a single route. And in my mind, I'm going, I want that thing. How much is that? And he says, $125. And so I did not believe his story that he built Ed's body. And I did not believe his story that he built the second one that we haven't seen yet, that's going to be on the next album. But I still wanted the body. So I didn't care.
Ray, can I ask you about the body? At that time, could you buy a Strat style guitar with a single routed humbucker anywhere? So that was totally custom and a new thing, right?
At that time, no one had seen that yet.
I got you.
The album, I mean, maybe people in Europe when he played it in Europe, but in many of the magazines that I was buying, that none of those pictures were in there.
Nothing out of Japan, anything like that?
And well, I mean,
didn't have it by
none
Japan
of the magazines that I saw,
gotcha,
like Rock Scene, Cream, Circus, you know, all those magazines in the late 70s. I never saw, the first time I ever saw the black and yellow guitar was on the cover, or the back cover of Van Halen 2 and the inner sleeve.
Okay.
Other than that, so I'm looking at this thing and I'm going, this will work. You know, I don't have to put a pick guard on this. And so I bought it, and I didn't get started on it right away. It kind of stayed raw for a little bit, but I had it, and I knew that I was going to finish it at some point. And so I actually finished it when I was 16. And when I got that thing, I was about 14. You know.
How did you acquire the neck for it?
Okay, so
where did it come from?
The first neck I had was a Schecter too, and I bought it at the same shop. And it was
what was the challenge matching the neck to the body, having them sort of a mismatch? Were you just at that age, we kind of shooting for it?
Because anything that I couldn't tackle, I would just bring into, you know, if I got
sure.
So when I say I built it, I was just assembling it, you know, like people that build cars and they get all the billet stuff and, you know, they're putting it together, but they're not fabricators, you know. Gotcha. So anyway, so I had it, and then the record came out, and I was like, oh man, that thing is good. And for a split second, I wanted to get it painted black and yellow.
So
but
let me
Grover would have done that for you.
Let me rewind a second. So Dave Schecter went in the back seat of his car and pulled out a body that said it was just like the one on the upcoming Van Halen album.
Right.
But that's the body that you bought.
Correct. And then my friend, who was also there,
if it's the same, then you got the same body. That
he told me, he goes, I built this at the same time out of the same stock of wood. And he goes, it was a one-off for Ed, but whenever I build bodies, I build a couple more. And so again, debut record, no one knows that they're going to dominate the world. It's just a baby band, really. Great band. but they, you know, the next album could stink. Thankfully it didn't. But so he was talking in terms of like, yeah, you know, it's almost like a novelty, you know, because he had another guitar body there that my friend bought, but it was a 2 humbucker strap body. So it had a bridge and a neck position body, and he got that. And I didn't want to hear about that. I wanted the single humbucker one. and so and then my friends, you know, they were saying, how are you gonna paint it? And I was like, I'm gonna paint it black and yellow just like it. And then they're like, no, do something original. And they're like, you know, that's gonna be terrible, you know, if we're playing shows and they just think that you copied him, you know, so do something original. So I didn't paint airbrush yet, so I had a guy that did like he was talented, but he was a little out there, and he was kind of, you know, I think he was under the influence a lot, you know. And so he painted it. It took a while. Almost, you know, there was times when I went into the shop because he was part of like another shop. So he was just renting a little tiny space. And they go, oh, no, he's not here. And I said, well, is my guitar here? And they go, oh, we don't see it. I'm like, oh, no. What is this? You know, because he'd show me like progression shots, but he was kind of, in my mind, a little flaky because, you know, $125 for me was hard to come by.
$125 back then is a lot for a body. That's like $500 today. Bodies don't cost that much, but that's what people were charging back then because it was the Wild West. There was no established market on aftermarket bodies yet.
Right. So he did finally produce it, and then he gave it to me painted, but he used like a nitrocellulose or something on it, and it was very it was like fragile. The clear coat was super fragile, and so I go, I can't have, because I hit it, and then I had like a little star, and then the clear coat was, thankfully the clear coat didn't link to the underpaint. It just came off in sheets. And I'm like, oh, no. So I brought it to a boat place, and they shot polyurethane on it, and then I cut and buffed it. It came out great, but it was super hard, so I could thrash around and not worry about, you know, it getting ruined. And I played that the entire time in Hollywood in the clubs, and then I got a little bit later on, I got another guitar. I got one of the first Steve Vai Ibanez gems in shocking pink, and so I traded between the two. But and that guitar played great, but no guitar I've ever had has played or sounded this good as the one that I originally did. You know.
You know, I'm going to ask you, Ray. Do you have any pictures of you playing that guitar in Hollywood by any chance?
I do. I think Tony might.
We have some.
Yeah, oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. There's Jay. What's up, man?
Jay doesn't have a good history with pink guitars, so.
I've heard about this.
So Ray, I'm gonna pull this up. Let me ask you. So, were you aware all along that this is the same? This is the body of the Bumblebee. Or when did that hit you?
I still thought Wayne Schecter. I mean, Wayne Charvel did it. I thought he was, you know, carving and shaping bodies and stuff. So I thought this guy was not being truthful, and only because that's what I had read, you know. And I mean, he seemed like a nice guy, and I didn't really hold it against him. I thought I got a great body that's kind of like that one that I was about to see on backup Van Halen too. And then I read a Wayne Charvel interview where he gave Dave Schecter acknowledgement. And then I read a like a kind of a retrospective history of Schecter guitars when it was in Van Nuys. And what's weird to me is both Wayne and Dave Schecter, it's like they didn't have those companies for as long as I thought they did.
Wayne had it way less time than Dave even. Dave kind of stuck it out for a while, and we'll get into why both of them ended up not having the companies anymore, because they're both tied together. But I mean, Charvel is the sale of Charvel to Grover Jackson is finalized in the fall of '78.
Ray, that's you right there.
That is me with the lightning bolt.
Wow.
Lightning bolts going all over the guitar. Yeah.
Got a little George Lynch looking, like
badass,
you know. Hell yeah, that's awesome, dude.
And is that Schecter neck you said?
That is, I think I had switched it out at this point. That might be the Schecter neck.
Well, so that I asked because it has 22 frets and a fretboard extension like a Charvel would.
Yeah. So that could be a Boogie Body's neck.
Okay. Yeah. Later Warmoth Boogie Bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is probably, that picture right there is probably 86, 87.
Right.
You know?
Do you know where that picture was taken?
That is awesome.
That
hair,
is that one is Gazzari's, I believe. See the fluorescent stars?
Yep. Yep.
That's the upstairs part there with the dressing
That's
room.
exactly right. Wow.
That's awesome. Now, the cool thing about the story, and Ray touched on how later he read interviews and saw acknowledgement for Schecter. A lot of us were doing the same thing, trying to figure out who made the Frank body, because Ed always said, "Oh, it's a Boogie Bodies. I got it from Charvel." Lynn always said it was a Boogie Bodies because of his relationship with Wayne and how they distributed parts back and forth with one another. But so some very astute folks and some people who are very deep in the Schecter history have always said the Frank looks like a Schecter body, the earlier ones. And if you look closely at the details of the Frankenstrat, it is a Schecter Dream Machine. It is exactly the same as all those front-loaded Dream Machine Super Strats that Dave Schecter was doing in the late 70s. Then you start to get deeper and you find these interviews with Wayne Charvel, who says, and the one quote in particular, quick backstory, Dave Schecter hated dealing with customers. He just didn't, this is what I've read from people who worked with him. He didn't like the process of a person coming in, speccing out a guitar, Dave builds it, delivers it, and then making sure the person's happy. So what Dave wanted was a company in between to do distribution. And I don't know that he actively sought this out, but he found some people who said, "Hey, I feel you on the distribution. We can do that for you. We can order 100 bodies from you, and we will work on getting them distributed." So Dave said, "Great, I can focus on building guitars and not dealing with Valley kids who are pissed because they spent their parents' money and didn't know how to put the guitar together and wanted their money back." So the company was called, it's escaping me right now. Ray, do you remember the company? Oh, ISA, International Sales Associates.
And the thing is, not to interrupt you, Donnny, but when he brought those bodies, the first one and then the one that my friend bought, into that shop, they were going in there to be on consignment.
Okay.
You know, like, just a place to kind of show them and see if anyone wanted them.
Right.
It wasn't like he was, directly selling them, but because of the owner introducing me to him like that, of course I wanted to know, even if I didn't believe him outright, I still wanted to know the story, you know?
Yeah.
It was interesting to me. So,
Yeah. So Dave doesn't want to do the sales thing. He doesn't want to deal. And that's when my example of a Valley kid came right from Dave saying he sold a guitar kit or a body and neck or something to a Valley kid who was like a rich snobby kid and wanted to return it. So what ends up happening is he gets in it with his company ISA, and they place orders with him. He delivers the bodies to them, and then he's out of it. They're dealing with distribution, getting into shops to like Charvel or direct to consumer or what have you. So then Dave is close with Wayne Charvel. They're buddies. You know, Wayne was a distributor of Schecter parts as well, in addition to the ISA thing. You can see old NAMM shows where Charvel's up there, and this is like pre-Jackson Charvel, and it says like distributor of Boogie Bodies, Schecter, Mighty Might. It says all the people they distribute for. So Wayne's interested in kind of getting more hands-on, I suppose. So what ends up happening is Dave gets Wayne involved with the ISA people, and ISA places an order with Wayne for 100 bodies, but Wayne couldn't make bodies. He didn't know how. So the assumption is Wayne then goes to Lynn Ellsworth, who was Boogie Bodies, and he was the one distributing bodies through Charvel. And he says, hey, Lynn, I need 100 bodies. Well, Lynn's a cancer researcher. That was his main profession. He wasn't a guitar builder as his main profession. He built guitars for rock stars as a side gig. He was a cancer researcher, like a serious like main profession. So he would be traveling all the time. That's where he would get his wood. He would hit up all the lumber yards and pick out the coolest lumber and then haul it back home. Our assumption is that Wayne goes to Lynn and says, I need 100 bodies. And Lynn says, I can't do it in the time you need. So Wayne's stuck. He owes this company who's paid him 100 bodies, but he doesn't know how to make bodies, and his guy can't make them because he's busy. So because I guess as a favor, because Dave kind of got him involved in all of this, he goes to Dave and says, hey, can you help me? Like, I need to deliver these bodies. They need to get made. Can I pay you to make them? Can you help me? So what they did is cleared out Dave's shop, and they made 100 ash bodies over one weekend. All ash. Some were Tellys, some were Strats, some might have been P-Bass, different bodies. And they were stamped Charvel, MFG, Azusa, California. That's where his shop was. It's like an ink stamp. And one of those bodies that was a reject from the batch ends up becoming the Frankenstrat. It's basically Wayne himself is responsible for these, but he made them with Dave Schecter because he wasn't capable. That's how he learned to make bodies. So he probably didn't immediately start making bodies himself at this point. He's probably still working with, like Dave, go ahead and make the bodies for the Bumblebee. But he kind of learned the process of making bodies, and that propagated down the line to him having his own stuff after Grover takes over. But so Dave Schecter, as part of that 100 ash body batch, helped Wayne make what became the Frankenstrat. The reason it was a second, as the story goes, is because there's a knot in the lower cutaway, like right about here on the Frankenstrat. There's a big knot there, and the center line is like the seam is like way offset. And John Burgess has done a great job at kind of showing how this happened. But the assumption is they got this piece of wood. It's two pieces, right? So center seam, two pieces of wood glued together. That's how you make a body blank. And there's this big knot. They're trying to avoid that knot. So they're shifting the templates around to try to avoid it. And the shifting of the templates is why that seam is off center. They didn't quite avoid the knots. There's a little bit of the knot visible here in the lower cutaway. And they say, okay, we can't deliver this as part of the batch. It's a B stock. So Wayne keeps it. Now that batch was probably late 76. Wayne keeps the body, and there may have been more second quality bodies, but we know there was that one. Ed comes in to the store in early 77, and he's looking around. He has this idea that I'm going to experiment with different body woods. And he sees the body on the ground. He asks about it. Wayne says, oh, it's a second. And Ed misunderstood what second meant. He thought it was like, okay, that's the next one to be made. No, it means that it's not top quality. It's kind of a junk body. So Ed buys it as a discount. Now, no one involved knew that, that this whole thing with like Lynn was supposed to make the body but couldn't. So Dave helped make it. It's all very complicated. So it's always assumed, okay, it's a Boogie Bodies, but it's not. And you take that, and then you look at this Ray's story, and the most important thing is just looking at the guitar and comparing it to the originals. It's unmistakable. Dave Schecter was making these bodies that, happened to become the Frankenstrat and happened to become the Bumblebee.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm gonna cut in now because I gotta take off. We've been having some police activity on our street, and so a couple cars just flew by, and people have been stealing like catalytic converters and exhaust. So
Oh no.
yeah, so I have to take off. But it was excellent meeting you guys. These stories are amazing. I could listen to this stuff all night. So I'll definitely catch the rest of the replay that I don't see. But
Nice meeting you.
Love you, Brendan.
yeah,
Be
it's
safe,
great meeting
brother.
you. Yes, thanks guys.
Stay
Excellent
safe,
stuff.
dude.
Yeah, man. I'll update you guys later. But have a good rest of the show. Okay. Take care, everybody.
See you, man. Be safe.
Peace.
Make sure the safety's on.
Oh yeah.
Machine gun guitar.
One thing I saw Andy Dion pop up on there, and he says he was listening to some Rankestein. That's not us. There's on YouTube. There's and I don't know what band it is, but that's not our stuff.
Did someone just mislabel it as Rankestein?
I think they just. I don't know how it happened. I've never heard the song before, but I saw it and I'm like, oh, I don't know what happened there, you know. But I have a song that was played on this guitar that I can play like the solo section of it in a little bit, you know.
Cool.
Yeah, dude.
Through the so yeah, I appreciate it, but
yeah. Let me ask you this, Ray. So you were on the Strip in the mid to late '80s. What were some of the other bands around you at the time?
Warrant, LA Guns, Guns N' Roses was there too, but they got signed pretty quick, you know. So they weren't out on the Strip that much like the rest of us were. I mean, everything you saw in Decline of Western Civilization Part 2 was there. You know, all those bands. It was just packed, man. It was. You would go down there Friday and Saturday nights, and it was hard to walk down the sidewalk for like a half a mile because it was so jam-packed full of people.
Wow.
Did you ever catch a Halloween in Hollywood, bro? Did you guys ever play a Halloween show?
Yeah.
Best time ever.
Absolutely.
Best time ever.
Yeah. We did Gazzari's, we did the Roxy. I think we may have done a Halloween at the Whiskey too, you know.
Nice. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
And
wow.
Yeah, it was Bullet Boys, you know, they were out there too. Actually, our rehearsal studio that we had was called Francisco Games. We always called it World of Music. I don't know if that was like an ad put out or whatever. Francisco Games Rehearsal Studios, and it was off Soto Street in East LA. And Bullet Boys rehearsed there. Megadeth rehearsed there. We were the first band that got a studio there, and 16-foot ceilings. It was like a factory or something that they just chopped up into different rooms. And Bullet Boys was there. Racer X was there with all those great players, Paul Gilbert and Bruce Bouillet and John Alderetti and Scott Travis. And Jeff Martin was singing for them. But one of the flyers I sent you where we opened for Hurricane. So Hurricane's singer was Kelly Hansen, and Kelly Hansen is the singer for Foreigner now. And Jay Schellen was their drummer, and he was playing for Yes the last time I saw him, and I think it was Yes, and opening for on the bill also was Raggedy Ann, which was John Karabi's band that he moved from Philadelphia to there, and they rehearsed right next to us. So a lot of great players and stuff, you know. It was a great scene, you know.
Very cool. Very
So Ray, me and you spoke this week, and you spoke of you being in a band, Tesla member,
Well, yeah.
Jeff Keith.
So when Tesla broke up for a couple years, me and Jeff were friends, and I knew him back about the time that he started with. I met him through when he joined a band called City Kid, and City Kid turned into Tesla. So they were City Kid all the way up till they got signed, and then once they got signed, the record company suggested a name change. So and so yeah, we go back that far. Actually, when my band was playing up in Northern California, we were managed by the same management company that was managing City Kid, Jeff's band. And so yeah, so when Tesla broke up, me and Jeff were just kind of messing around and just saying, yeah, it's, just write some songs or something like that. And then so we were working on a few things, and then Tommy reached out to him and said, hey, why don't you come down and check out, I'm jamming with a bass player and drummer. And so he went down there, and then we all got together and started writing songs. And that was initially called Bar 7. Initially Sofa King. Like so fucking
Sofa King.
Nuts or whatever. And
so fucking right.
And we changed it before we got signed and recorded a record, because people were just associating it with like, why are you guys lazy? You guys like what you Sofa King? You're just the, So it's like, no, it's supposed to be so fucking, not Sofa King. So the joke was going over way too many people's heads, and we had to keep explaining it. So then Jeff came up with the name Bar 7, and we recorded the record and toured on it, and then we were out. We did hundreds of shows across the country, and then Tesla did a reunion show, and that went well. So then they got back together, and I went to work for them. So.
Nice.
Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a great story, brother.
Nice.
Do you still happen to have that original guitar you were talking about? Lightning bolts.
I do.
Really?
But it's not Lightning Bolt anymore, because when their album Psychotic Supper came out, Tesla's album, Tesla, the history of Nikola Tesla, electricity and all that. So it wasn't lightning bolts. It was, on his guitar, it was more like electrical charges, but it looked like lightning bolts,
I got you.
I gotta change the gig on this thing, because I don't want to look like I'm trying to copy him. You know what I mean? ESP built him a guitar, and it had all this lightning all over it, and so I was like, well, okay. So I painted it flat black until Bar 7 was getting ready to go out on the road, and then I said, I'm gonna do something a little bit more creative than just a flat black rattle can guitar, And so I got the Dremel out, and I started carving in it all these like glyphs of like people that had seen aliens and stuff like that, and they relate it to like, oh, there was a piece of metal with all these symbols on it. So I just carved them all into the guitar, and then I painted it in liquid iron and liquid copper, and then I threw corrosive chemicals on it and let it process. And so
Tony, I can't wait to see this thing, bro. Oh, that is badass.
That's the way it came out.
Oh, I have never seen anything like this. Donnny, have you ever seen anything like this?
Yeah, because I played that guitar.
Holy crap, that thing is seriously
And there's the profile of the forearm.
Yeah, that forearm
Wow.
contour screams Schecter.
That's
Wow.
Quite a
sick.
bit different than normal strats and stuff. And then
Wow.
there's that kind of profiling stuff. And one thing that Dave Schecter told me is when he said he built extras, you know, when he does guitars. And he said, this is another one I built that at the same time, you know, as the, what wasn't called the Bumblebee yet, but he said the one thing he did is change the electronics cavity route. So he changed Ed's, but he didn't change any of the other ones. So that's the electronic cavity route there.
So it's like a full rear strat cavity with a recess, as opposed to Ed's, which had no recess and had that little notch in it.
Yeah. So it was like almost like he put a piece of wood over here or some kind of a template to cut it off right here. So there'd be one solid strip and cut off this little corner. And you can kind of see that kind of looks kind of, it looks exactly like that, but with that corner cut off.
Yeah.
You know?
That's cool. Is that Velcro for your cover plate?
Yeah, when I put a cover plate on it, yeah. It's just a block of wood in there with, just so I can attach it. Because I had some screws, but they were so tiny, and that shelf, that little ledge for the screws, is so small
that the screws can't really get there.
No, and I had it screwed in, but then it just kept like stripping out.
Yeah.
So
this is what he was talking about with the cavity. If you see, it's the same shape, but right here there's a notch because Dave, Ray, correct me if I'm wrong, but Dave told you he did this when he sold you the body. He said, he said on Ed's I stuck a piece of wood here.
Yeah. So so that probably so that he could say, you know, it's different.
Yeah.
You know,
and Ed's was unique to everybody else's.
Not do an identical body and sell it to me, and then, you know.
So it would have been strictly cosmetic, no intonation or tone functionality or strength or anything other than that?
No, I think it was just so, because you could tell he's using the same sort of template that would be the relieve on the front of a Strat.
Right.
That the pick guard would go over, but he just flipped it onto the back and did that. And I think that's how he decided that, you know, Ed's would be one of a kind, at least in that, you know,
small, insignificant way.
That is so cool.
And just a reminder to everyone listening, this is Dave Schecter is telling Ray this all before Van Halen 2 comes out and anyone's ever seen that guitar.
Right.
So and you look back in hindsight and it's way too specific and way too just spot on to what we end up seeing to be a coincidence.
And I'll say this. I was listening, but I didn't believe it.
Yeah.
So I didn't believe it actually until just after Ed's death. You know, I went down rabbit holes, just reading everything I could or watching videos and just, you know, and that's when I got the confirmation of, you know, what he had told me previously was not, you know, I just thought there's no way this guy built that first guitar.
What did he say when he handed you that out of the back seat of his car that day?
Well,
did he
didn't hand it to me. He brought it in for the owner of the music store, to put it on the wall. And so I'm sitting there going, oh, I gotta have this thing. I will spend all of my money that I worked all summer to get, but I gotta have this thing. And so you know, I actually ended up purchasing it from the store that he brought it in. So however they chopped it up who gets what percentage or whatever, because I think he had already struck a deal, because the other body was brought him at the same time, basically one at a time, but so yeah, that's when he told me the story that this was going to be the one that you're going to see on the second record.
Made out of what kind of wood again?
Northern hard ash.
Just like the Frank.
Yeah.
Now, it's important too, because this is where this gets nebulous, because a lot of different people are claiming different things. Dave was really even overstating his, not that this is to look over, but he was really overstating to say he built it, because what really was happening is he was producing bodies, working closely with Charvel, knowing what it's going to, but he produced a body and gave it to Charvel, just like Lynn Ellsworth produced a neck, because the neck on the B, the first neck, was a Boogie Bodies. So the neck came from Boogie Bodies, the body came from Schecter, everything was done, painted, assembled in-house, just like the original Frank, though that wasn't like Charvel doing it. It's just Ed got a body from Wayne. He didn't know who made it or why. It was the first time he ever bought a body, but that was made by Dave and Wayne. And then later he got a neck from Lynn, and then Ed assembled everything. So these guys are playing different roles in the whole process. And everyone thinks that they did more than they really did. I think Dave is pretty reasonable in saying what he did, but like Grover says, I did everything. All these different people think they did more than they did. So that's why it's so confusing, is because it really was. And this is how industry works in the guitar business. People subcontract these aspects all the time. Like, certain places will do everything in-house, but even Fender will subcontract certain things to smaller shops or their other factories or what have you. But, these guys were having different people do different aspects of the build.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Wow.
Let me ask you, Donnny. So I want to get to the nuts and bolts of what was on this guitar.
Oh, one other thing. I'm sorry to interrupt. So because it's Northern Hard Ash, every guitar that, if I have anything to do with, wanting to build one or put one together or whatever, it's because this guitar has sounded so great over the years. I always want them to be built out of Northern Hard Ash. And so this one here that I'm currently working on, neck by Donnny Ward. This is Northern Hard Ash.
Oh, that is sick. Absolutely awesome. Look at this thing.
With
oh man,
1942 gunner strap hardware as instead of the turnbuckles. And so
are those turnbuckles original or remanufactured? Not that it matters, because they look totally badass.
These are original.
Very cool.
Someone's granddaddy used those to shoot down some Germans.
Yeah, or
nice.
or they were
Nice.
overstock or whatever. But,
Right.
Gotcha.
It came with the year and month that it was
Wow.
manufactured
On the belt.
and but the point of this one is because everyone says, or Ed said, that the tone was ruined when he cut that chunk out. And so I'm putting this together to say that was probably another, I think it was just a misdirection, because he didn't want a bunch of people, because he ended up playing it still through 1980. And there's documentation that it's on the first three records too.
Yep.
And so, and I don't think he was the type of guy that would put it on a record if it ruined the tone.
Right.
And you could hear those that Selin Arena show from '78. when he's finishing Eruption, and then he's turning the knob on the Echoplex, and then he switches to the Shark, and the tone on that thing, that's live, that's shot, that's not, I don't think that's board feed, I think that's camera microphone, and the tone on that thing was amazing. It almost sounded better than the tone that he also had on the Strat. You know what I mean? It was massive. So, like the Variac, he was turning it down. He was telling people he was turning it up until watch the tubes melt. You know, I think it was misdirection because he was protecting his brand. No one had heard a guitar tone like that ever.
People still can't get a guitar tone like that.
Yeah, the best guitar tone you could think of was, Jimmy Page, Ted Nugent, Joe Perry, Tony Iommi, awesome. But his was head and shoulders above that. When you heard it, it turned your head around, and so rightfully so. He wanted to protect it and didn't want everyone else. I think, I'm speculating, that he didn't want everyone else sounding like he does. Now, when I say sounding, a lot of people say, no, it's all in his fingers. Yes, but when he hits an A chord and someone else hits an A chord, that's comparative. You know what I mean? And when just like on the beginning of Mean Street, when he hit the open D and G together, that's just two strings together, and that just that little section is crushing. So it's not, that's not really in the fingers. You know what I mean? All the other stuff. But so I don't even think he wanted people doing that. I don't even think people wanted anyone. I don't think he wanted anyone else striking an open D and an open G string and having it sound like what he put down. So I think it was just protecting his brand. You know what I mean? He didn't want, everyone just to, now, I'm building a guitar to prove that, and I know that the Shark has been made by EVH, and it's great. It plays great, sounds great, but I kind of wanted one. Northern Hard Ash to me is kind of close to what they said was Karina wood, but it was actually Japanese sen, So it's just it's a hard ash, and so.
And you do notice a tone difference in different woods, is that correct?
Absolutely. That strat I showed you,
yeah.
The notes jump off the face of that body. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it always has. When I had the other paint job on it, it's acoustically, it sounds great. It sounds loud comparatively to, like my Ibanez Gem that I love. It plays great and stuff, but it doesn't
have that ring out acoustically.
It doesn't have that snap, Yeah. There's almost a snap to it, and the density kind of gives it a good lower register sort of punch, and so I don't think that there's any way in hell this guitar is going to sound terrible or ruined.
Yeah.
And
let me
this is the other thing too. So he said he ruined the tone. But what was one of the first guitars that he commissioned from Charvel? The Bumblebee. Okay. The Star. The Star is the Shark with less wood. Yeah. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, and he played that for a while. It didn't sound terrible. You know what I mean? So, I think if it sounded terrible, he'd want to stay as far away from that loss of wood shape that he claimed ruined the tone.
Right.
I think it was that he didn't want people doing what he did, and rightfully so. So, I mean, he created stuff that had never been done before. So, Why now should the world just, start?
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Start a million copies of it,
They tried, though. He didn't stop people from making copies.
That's true.
But they may perhaps have done more, and more companies may have been doing sharks if he had not claimed.
Yeah, if he'd have said, this tone is amazing, he promoting it like that, there would have been many people. I mean, I think it benefited him that he poo-pooed it,
Well, and he was also very mistaken and didn't understand the shark in terms. He thought it was Carina, but that's not a wood. It's like a marketing term for white limba that Gibson was using. But the catalogs were unclear. Sometimes they said it was Carina. Sometimes they said it was ash with a Carina style finish. But those were not ever white limba. They were always Sen. And Ed, too, I think until to the day he died, he thought that his was special, that the early ones were a different wood and they moved to ash. He later even said that when he would go back and try to get new destroyers to recreate what he had on the first one, the new ones are made from ash and they suck, is what he would say. But not knowing that the original one was Sen, which is ash.
Right, yeah.
He just got a good one. He just it was a
right.
good one versus not a good one.
At Les Paul's. So I bought a gold top Les Paul. Was amazing, great. It's not the one behind me, but one kind of like it. And then I bought a white Les Paul custom because I'd played some customs before, and I loved them. But I got one sight unseen, right, through a musician's friend, and it stunk. I tried and tried and tried to make that thing sound good, and tried to make it the playability better and stuff.
What year was it, Ray?
It was that Les Paul custom was a 1991.
Interesting.
But I played other 91s that played great, sounded great. I couldn't figure out what the problem was. I switched pickups on it, didn't really work like I wanted it to, and so you got to plan before you buy them. They're all different.
Yeah.
So Ed might have just got lucky with the one that he bought and loved, and then
it could be that the earlier ones were just better made too, because the Chris Holmes one was like equally massive if you listen to Women and Children First.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, like I say, one Les Paul is different from another. They're not all the same. And I imagine it's exactly the way it is for all of the guitars,
I certainly have ones that I prefer over others kicking around.
Yeah. They're all different, man.
Yeah.
And
so Tony was leading into kind of the nuts and bolts, what made the B tick when it was first put together. And we can, I think that's a good segue, because we can talk about the parts that were on it and why it didn't work for Ed and what he did to try to rectify the situation. We already talked about the Floyd Rose transition and how that became his Floyd Rose platform. But when Ed got the guitar, it was essentially exactly like this. So I already showed the rear cover, but he had, I don't know if he did this or it came this way, but it had aluminum foil shielding in it. And this is something he would later do on his Frank. The Frank, many people don't know this, but under the pick guard and in the jack cup is aluminum foil shielding, just like that. So we have a fully black headstock. The only thing that's not painted is the fretboard. Bird's Eye Maple Boogie Body's neck. That's the neck that was on it, because Grover wasn't making necks, Wayne wasn't making necks, Lynn was making necks, Dave was making necks too, but his look totally different. They're one piece, and when Ed sanded this finish off, it's clearly a two-piece Boogie Bodies. So we got a Boogie Bodies neck. We have the Schecter body, as we posit. CBS 70s cast pop metal tremolo. I guess that's what whoever was doing the assembly at Charvel had available instead of using a Mighty Mite. I don't know why, because you would expect a Charvel to come with a Mighty Mite. That's what they stocked. This was not the pickup that was in it. That's the only difference in my guitar. This is the only difference for what the original condition would have been. It would have been a zebra pickup. We kind of touched on that briefly. Maybe a Mighty Mite, maybe a Seymour Duncan. We don't know. Seymour had worked on Ed's pickup by the time he got this, or if he didn't, he would have soon. So perhaps that was how he was introduced to it. We don't know. Of course, standard side mount jack. This was not the original strap, of course. This is a seat belt out of like an old, I don't know, like an old Jeep or an airplane or something, like a lap seat belt. Mm-hmm. And Ed basically like cut this down and installed it on that end with an eye screw and then a standard strap button. If you look at the Van Halen 2 shots, there's one eye screw and one strap button. So he hadn't I guess he didn't have a second eye screw to use, but that's how it's attached. And if you need to disconnect it in a hurry, there you go. It's kind of gimmicky and it's big and unwieldy and it'll flail around and ding your guitar up, but he didn't give a shit about that. What's interesting about this is Michael Anthony had this first. On the 78 tour, Michael Anthony has a strap like this. So I guess Ed might have helped him with it, or maybe Mike just did it himself. But Ed had the crazy straps, the bomber gunner strap, and the dog chain strap. Mm-hmm. And you see Mikey with one of these on his bass. Nice. So that's essentially with the Charvel logo. I know I touched on that. With Charvel logo, we got West German double tab Schaller tuners minis. And yes, just full painted neck. And Ed did not like finish on his neck. I think this was purely an aesthetic choice, and it was not one that stuck long because he sanded this shit off the back. This neck later went on the Frankenstrat for the 79 tour. When he got the Boogie Body's neck for the Floyd, this came off and went to the Frank. And all of this lacquer or poly or whatever it was sanded off. Only little bits remaining on the heel. In the headstock and it sands up here and everything. So this is how it came, but he was not satisfied. He tried different pickups. This was the first one we can confirm he put in as an aftermarket pickup. This is a Mighty Mite. I don't know the name. I always forget it, but it's the one with the clear acrylic bobbin, and you can see the coils down in there. This is an original. My buddy Dimitri gave me this. He has a very old thread on VH Links about the history of the Bumblebee and all the pictures. And this pickup is featured in that thread because it was his for years. And he gave this to me when I built this guitar very generously. I got an original 70s. I know I'm backtracking. I got an original 70s CBS Strat trim, original 70s Mighty Mite tremolo arm with a brass tip, and original tuners. Everything that on this guitar that can be original is. So yeah, he went to this pickup, which this is how the guitar looked on the cover of Van Halen 2. But Ed in interviews said that it was just a garbage pickup he had laying around, which I believe him. He probably didn't like the sound of it, but he was experimenting because it looked really cool. But later he moves to the Super Distortion, and that's where he sticks. He gets the Super Distortion in here, and I did confirm, by the way, I found a picture. It is a Super Distortion. You can see the holes where Mighty Mite didn't have them. So he puts a white double cream Super Distortion in this guitar around the time he puts a Floyd on it. And that's the configuration that he played it in. That's when he said, okay, this is the sound. But it's a pretty simple rear-loaded Super Strat. There's not a lot going on. It's just, there you go. There's the exact configuration. Wow. So yeah, I mean, there's not a lot going on. You see there's no string tree up at the headstock. I'm sure it came with one, but Ed didn't have one because for whatever reason, he couldn't get it to stay in tune with the way he used his tremolo. So string tree came off. I'm sure those two strings were popping out of the nut like crazy, but he made it work. He talked in interviews how he used to keep his finger behind the nut when he was doing chords to help prevent it from popping out. Yeah. So you see in the picture there, you see the eye screw at the top horn, but there's no screw at the butt. There's a regular strap button. So it came with two strap buttons, and when he was tinkering, he got one eye screw and not the other one. So it was really I believe him when he says he finished building it in time for the photo shoot. I think he was just it was in parts and pieces, and he was putting it together for the photo shoot. And here we have, this is in the middle of the 79 tour. We got the first Floyd Rose that he ever used. That's probably the third ever made. Now, what's interesting about this, and I have my own theories as to why. It's not chrome plated, so you see the rust. I mean, he's only had it for a couple months here, and the rust is already just out of control because there's no plating. It's raw steel. Ed played hard. He sweat all over it. He was in all sorts of different climates. My take is that it was unplated because he was in Seattle and he needed a trim, and there wasn't enough time for Floyd to make it. They were in Seattle for 2 days, so he came. He probably saw him the first day, stayed overnight, had another show, and then they left. So Floyd might have made that tremolo there that day when he came and just didn't have time to get it plated. And Ed said, I don't care. I want it. Like, I need to go experiment with this thing. So that's a theory as to why his is unplated when the rest of them are plated. But, like the knob change to that black Strat knob, who knows where I got that. But you see the super distortion in there. It's got the funky pickup ring. He was doing these weird, like, thin plastic pickup rings that were offset so he could kind of move the pickup relative to the bridge, because on the original B, it's either too close or too far from the bridge. I don't remember which, but it strikes me as him trying to kind of shift the pickup in the route with the ring already set so he can kind of get it. Because Ed learned early about pickup positioning in a guitar. Now, this is a very interesting photo. This is actually before the last two we looked at. This is Van Halen 2 tour rehearsals. So this is after the first tour is concluded and the album is recorded, but just leading up to the second world tour. And you see that is the original Frankenstrat neck on the B. It's the only time this has ever been seen, the only outing of this guitar in this configuration. The Frank at this outing was still black and white. It had a white pick guard with 3 pickups. So it had the humbucker and 2 singles. It had a Telly bridge pickup in the middle and the red phenolic pickup in the neck. White Charvel pickup with those 3 pick guard with those 3 pickups. It had the regular Strat trim. It had a rosewood bored Boogie Bodies neck, and the black and white with the pinstripes removed. So that freed this neck up to go on the B. So Ed was swapping stuff around. I think he was trying to find a distinct look ahead of the second tour to figure out what guitars he's going to bring and what configuration. The B didn't make the cut because he ended up taking the Star, the Dragon Snake, which was just really a novelty guitar at that point, and the Frank. But then the B comes back into the fold when the Floyd gets installed. So that's a very interesting transitional pick. You can see the Gibson logo clearly shining off the headstock, and all the oil stains around the nut where he would use 3-in-1 for the lube. It's a great picture.
That is crazy. Wow.
Let me ask you, Donnny. So, give us a little preview on this neck that you've been so gracious to offer as a prize for our trivia tonight.
Well, it'll essentially be winner's choice, but it will almost certainly be basically this neck. Now, what you can't see about this neck is that under the paint, the shaft of the neck is bird's eye maple as well. But it's really just a 2-piece bird's eye maple Boogie Bodies neck. It has rosewood dot markers, black side dots, 21 fret, because that's how the Boogie Bodies necks were. It's got very distinct features that make Boogie Bodies necks differ from Strat necks. And the winner, if they have a preference, can choose things like nut width and carve, but the standard would be exactly what Len Ellsworth was making and exactly what Ed's would have been, which is a thin, wide carve. The last time I was on was the show with Len, and Len told us exactly the process that he used to make these. And he's told me personally, like on phone calls, and answered a lot of my questions about the truss rod install and all the little details that make a Boogie Bodies neck special. But if the winner says, well, I don't want the wide nut, I want an arrow nut, we'll make it to your spec. But essentially, it'll be a Boogie Bodies neck, and you can either go for this, which is the standard, how it came, or excuse me, or we could do, which is essentially the same exact neck, how the guitar looked when he got the Floyd neck. Now, the Floyd neck was the one with a huge knot on the headstock. We saw a couple pictures of that in the photos. We actually, as a service, offer where we will carve the texture of the exact knot into the headstock of the wood. So when you're doing your replica, you can sit there and stain it. If you're crafty or you want someone to do it for you, you can stain it, and then you have the texture of Ed's exact knot in the headstock of your neck. So that's an option too if you go for the we call it the knotty neck because it has the knot, big old knot on the headstock. So yeah, I mean, there's some flexibility in specs and which neck you want. If you want to go for the early one with the strat trim or the later one with the Floyd. The Floyd is the more common one. With most people doing Bs have a Floyd with the 79 Tour configuration, basically. But just to throw out the different configurations that are available and kind of the specs and how I derived them by knowing Lynn and talking to Lynn and kind of getting a feel of how he did things. So it should be.
And coming from you, Donnny, it will be top of the line. Everybody knows that.
Thank you. I hope so.
You're a legend, bro.
Oh.
And thank you for doing this, man.
My pleasure.
So we've, because it's such a nice prize, and thank you again, Donnny, we've made it a little interesting for tonight. We would normally run a one-off Van Halen Nearly Impossible question, but tonight we're going to give you 3. Whoever has the most correct after 3 is the winner. So we're basically playing the best of 3. But these are pretty tough questions, so good luck.
Kick some rock. Tony's already ordering his neck. He wants it narrow with no paint, Donnny. Forget the trivia. It's all good.
I've already got it halfway done.
His links, Donnie's links are down below in the description. We will put you in touch with Vestige Guitars and Donnny. So, yes, let me find these questions. Good luck, everybody. This is huge for tonight.
Good luck, you guys.
Wow. Whew. I wish I was playing. How about it, Charles?
Look, I got to go. I'll be back.
Damn, yeah, man. Wow. All right. Okay. So there's 3 questions. The first correct answer that we see, you guys on the panel know the answers, and we will look for the first correct. Good luck. Thanks for being here. Are we ready? Are we ready? Okay. Let's go to question 1 of 3. These are toughies. So, all right. Number 1, good luck.
Right there, guys.
Ed paid $110 at Sears for his first store-bought new guitar, the Tisco Del Rey. Why did he choose this particular guitar? Why?
That's a great opening question.
Why did he choose
this
guitar?
I love the answer, and he said it in interviews.
I think I'm seeing an answer here that is correct. We're going to go with,
I believe so,
that one right there because it had 4 pickups and looked cool. 4 pickups is good enough.
He thought that four pickups being more than the standard amount made it better.
Bigger sound.
That's right.
I
Dream Hackian takes the lead.
Well played, bro.
You got that, Charles? You writing this down?
Got it, brother. I got it,
all
bro.
Right.
I'm all over.
Right on. All right. He's the scorekeeper over here, so. All right. All right. Okay, so yes, and your answer, because it had 4 pickups, and that was more than any other guitar in the store, actually. That would have been an acceptable half, but all right, so, dude, you are 1 answer away from winning this neck. Let's go to question number 2. All right. Let's go. Here we go.
Quick reminder before we finalize. If you should refresh your stream, because if you're behind, you're going to hear the question later. So go ahead and refresh the stream. Hit like while you're at it. But refresh the stream so you catch up.
Right. Let's go to question 2 since I've already showed it. Here we go. Ed started playing his brother's acoustic, then borrowed a Silvertone before buying the Tesco Del Rey. His next guitar was a Gibson 12-string hollow body that he did something very unusual to. What did he do?
I'm seeing an answer that just came in.
What did he do to it? And that's the first one. He only used 6 strings on it. That's right.
Very well played, Ryan.
Yeah.
That was lightning fast. I couldn't believe how quick.
Yeah. Yes. So
that's awesome. Excellent.
That was, yeah. So, all right. So we have a race here. So we are going to the last question. If either of those guys get this one, they are the winner. If not, we'll have a 3-way tie. And then we'll have to give away 3 necks. Kidding.
Actually, Tony, Dream Hacking asked the question, why did you do 6 strings? Interesting. That's actually one of the first modifications I think he's ever noted for doing.
Yeah, that's fair.
To a guitar. He removed 6 of the 12 and turned it into a 6-string guitar.
So he could play it like a standard guitar rather than a jangly 12-string.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right on, guys. Sorry,
Right
Tony.
on. That's a good point, though. That's the start of many great history, dude. All right. Okay, so we're going to question number 3. Everybody, you still got a chance. Little chance. All right, here we go. Unrelated to the previous 2. Here we are. All right, get ready. The early 80s infamous incident between Eddie Van Halen and Geddy Lee, where Eddie poured his beer into Geddy's tape recorder, glass 2. Where did this happen? Name the city. We've all
Answers
heard
coming
this.
in, guys.
We've all heard this story.
I don't know the answer to this one personally, so I don't know how. Some of you guys, whoever answers this, you're a nut.
Next level. All right.
R2, R3.
R2.
Nice.
By the way,
Latency.
I need to know if it's R2 or R3 because it makes a difference in how I make the neck. All right, sorry, dumb joke.
All right, I'm still looking. I'm seeing all kind of. There it is, right there.
Look at that.
Boom.
If that's the answer, it looks like it was answered by Dream Hackian earlier.
Was it? Let me go back up. Hang on, Andy. Hang on.
It was in the first batch.
Yep, there it is. It's way above it. Sorry, I missed it. Andy, you rock, bro. There's your winner. That's the winner right there.
Rock on,
Dream
bro.
Hacking. Congratulations, you are the winner.
Nice, bro.
All
Full guitar
right.
neck.
Yes. So email me. You can email. The links are down below for Vestige Guitars. So yeah, right on, bro. Nice. Nice.
That's awesome.
So, Dream Hacking, have you got an idea of what the neck's going to go on? That is super cool.
You guys want to run the tiebreaker just to see if anyone's crazy enough to get it? Just a question.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Let's go to the tiebreaker. Let's see what the so everybody, let's there's your answer and stats for that. All right, the tiebreaker is this. What do these songs have in common with each other? Running with the Devil, Jamie's Crying, Feel Your Love Tonight, and Ice Cream Man. What do they have in common with each other?
I had this one. I was going down the wrong path when I was trying to think about this one. It was like a bait question for me, and because it's almost one answer but not quite.
There's Mike. How you doing, Mike? Good to see you, dude.
What's going on, Mike? Right on, bro. Hey, Ben Tom. Good to see you, brother.
Yeah, they are on the first album, but that's not the answer. Next level, dude.
Mike was the first to answer what I thought the question was going for, but there's one song that does not fit that, and it makes the answer different.
Yeah.
Does Feel Your Love Tonight have the phaser? Maybe during the solo?
I think so.
Maybe. Yeah, yeah, okay. But that's also not it.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, this one's tough.
No takers.
I like, obviously, like when you guys hear it, it's obvious, but it's hard because there's a lot of other routes that it could go down that you have to really think about.
Yeah, it is. But what was different? Somebody had answered they were all on Van Halen 1. Yeah, but what was different about that album compared to others?
Yeah, these songs are special in relation to the other songs on Van Halen 1.
Mm-hmm.
Should we? I'm going to throw a hint out. It's in some way production related, but not. That's not like that. Might also be bait, but it is production related.
You guys are gonna go, oh.
I know that I did. So don't worry, guys, because I did the same thing.
You know, if this is the tiebreaker and nobody got it, holy shit.
This would be tense if we were in a three-way tie right now. So to answer some of the guesses that are coming in that aren't correct, Destroyer, no, because Ice Cream Man was not the Destroyer. No Tremolo, no, because Ice Cream Man was the Frank, and there's trem use in the solo. Some of the things about the Phase 90, I mean, maybe they all had Phase 90, but so did the rest of the album. These are distinct from the other songs. The other songs were not, did not have these the same vibe that these had. There's the one thing that separates them. So some of the answers that yes, they all do have the follow this thing in common. That so did the other songs on the album, but these are distinct from the other songs in this one way.
Read the question again and look at those songs.
Particularly around the solos. Think about what's special about the solos on these songs.
Telling them an awful lot there, Donnny.
Well, they're struggling, man.
They are.
And
there it is. Now.
Well, yeah, it's in the right wheelhouse, but kind of the opposite. Everyone's going to smack their head when they hear this.
They are. Everybody give one more.
Ah, there we go. Andy got it.
There it is. Exactly right.
You rock, Andy. Very cool, brother.
And Jerry basically got it too, though they weren't always solos that were punched in. Some of them were solos on the main track and then the backing track punched in, but they not all it differed. But the main point is that they all had overdubbing of some sort.
Andy got it. Right on, Andy. It's good to see you, bro. Let me
very cool.
Let me show you Andy.
Yeah.
I'm Andy Dion, and you're one.
Good to see you, brother. Nice.
Yeah, we had a couple people. It clicked at the same time, but no stakes on that one. I thought it'd just be fun because I had the same kind of struggle with the question that I think everyone else in chat did.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Someone said 4 necks.
4.
You're killing me.
All righty. Okay, so
congratulations, Dream Hackian, bro. Very cool.
Dream Hackian is the winner.
He did write in the chat. I don't know if you saw it, Donnny, but he didn't really have any plans. He didn't even know he was going to play trivia, so he doesn't really know what he's going to do with it yet. He's going to think about it, figure it out.
Do a Bumblebee replica or do your own take, but inspired. You might as well use the inspiration of the bee concept. So make it something maybe like an alternate reality bee, maybe to your spec, but definitely what I love to do when I'm building guitars is make a plausible story. I'm building the guitar now, but I want it to have a plausible story for maybe it was a pre-CBS Strat that got hacked up and then someone got a boogie body's neck and did this to it. Give it some reason that you can say, oh, this is based on this really niche thing. It's just cool. It gives it some backstory. It's cool.
Nice.
Super cool, man.
Nice. All right. So we have a winner for the neck for tonight. Where were we on the nuts and bolts of the Bumblebee, Donnny?
Well, I think we pretty much covered it. The how it came, what he messed with, how it ended up in his favorite configuration, which was that early Floyd and the super distortion. Not a lot goes into it. I think by the time that the whole Grover Jackson thing happens and he disassembles it and he's done with it, I think he's ready to apply what he's learned to the Frankenstrat, and that's his favorite guitar anyway. So he didn't really need the B as a platform anymore to experiment with the Floyd, with the different pickups. He kind of found what he wanted. So, it absolutely integral to him tinkering and finding and chasing what he wanted in a guitar, though it didn't last as long as the Frank, or certainly as long as the 5150 did. But just an amazing guitar nonetheless. And all the players who were involved, Mighty Might with the parts, some of the parts, DiMarzio with the pickup, Floyd Rose with the third Floyd Rose ever made, Lynn Ellsworth with the Boogie Body's neck, Dave Schecter with the body. I mean, there's so many huge names in the guitar industry that totally changed everything about it. You know, and Mike points out correct point that we touched on earlier. The oversized pickup ring, the little thin plastic thing that's all crude and it's not quite square. It's shifted. It moves the pickup in the cavity to kind of fine tune that. So there were these little tweaks he was doing to try to get it spot on. And then he moved away from it because Grover blew everything. And if you look at Ed's feeling of that, and if you evaluate kind of what Grover did objectively, it looks like Grover really blew a great opportunity. Who would not have wanted to have Ed as their flagship player in 1980, 1979, 1980, 1981? Instead, you know, that was in Grover's lap. And instead, he ended up with a grudge against him that never was resolved, to my knowledge. And Ed goes to Kramer, which Kramer was great. And the Kramer thing was very important. But Kramer's were not as well made as Charvel's were. Just flat out, period. The parts that were used and the craftsmanship was not the same quality. But that's where Ed ended up because they were nice to him. So if you're
think about back then, I mean, there wasn't really a lot of player endorsements back then.
Right.
Like I remember seeing Joe Perry for BC Rich or something, but like, you know, you didn't see Jimmy Page for Gibson. You know, they didn't really do that sort of thing.
Right.
So that would have been massive.
Yeah. Another first, you know.
Yeah.
Ed was involved in so many firsts. There's just another one to add to the list.
Yeah.
Ray, let me add. It's taken a moment to. So Dave Schecter said that when he was making the guitar body for the upcoming Van Halen album, but he always made a couple extra every time he makes. That means that you have one of just two identical matches
Except
to Bumblebee.
Except for the electronics compartment.
The route.
Right.
Yeah.
The route in the back. Yeah.
Right.
And later on, Dave would do. Actually, there are serialized Schecter bodies that say VH in the serial number. They weren't advertised as this is a Van Halen model, but that's how he identified that it was a single pickup, rear loaded. There are other ones out there, but they're not the same. And well, I think there are similar ones that have that same rear route that's on Ray's and the B, aside from the one that makes the B unique. But you know, they're two pickup models. They're different. But Dave did have some VH serialized bodies that were later, just to distinguish this is a rear-loaded single pickup guitar.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Ray, hold that guitar up again, if you would, for us, sir.
Sure. And then if you want, I'll play a recording that it was recorded with.
And notice that position of the pickup relative to the Floyd. When Mike pointed out, and we touched on it earlier, Ed moved that away from the bridge a little bit because he was fine-tuning the tone. He did that with the funky mounting ring. Now, I will say, when I built my B, I did it a long time ago before I had any inkling. I would have still said Grover probably made the body back then. My forearm contour is totally different. It's like so off. If you look at my contours, they're totally different to Ray's and what Ed's probably was and how Dave was making them. But you can see by looking at that thing how comfortable that will be on your arm, the way that contour is.
Beautiful.
And then you get tetanus when you play Ray's.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, it was fun to recustomize it.
It's amazing. And Ray's definitely an artist in his own right. And part of his identity is an artist, and you can tell with how he makes his guitars his own. They're amazing.
Yeah, very, very, very unique, man.
Yeah, I can't wait to finish the paint job on the Shark.
Destroyer?
Yeah.
Oh, the Shark. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be different, but it'll be
How
different.
different?
Well, so the way I'm doing it is I'm doing a completely different paint job. Obviously, I'm not doing a replica in that sense. The replica, the body shape, yeah, but the paint treatment will be it'll be familiar, but it'll be more in line with the kind of art that I do. The Von Zombo art that I do. I do art under the name Von Zombo because there was too many, believe it or not, there's too many Ray Hinckleys, and they would go, I didn't find your name, I couldn't find your artwork. Found some crooked cop named Ray Hinckley, and then I found an actor whose sizzle reel or demo reel was The Twisted Mind of Ray Hinckley, the serial killer.
Oh,
And so I just decided to make up a completely fake name and combine a couple things that I thought were interesting. And as soon as I did that and put it together as Von Zombo, not one person it comes up immediately on Google, you know?
Yep.
So there's no, this is the song. Okay. So this song was recorded with this guitar, and I'm just going to play a section, like the solo section, you know, the chorus into the solo. But we were playing Gazzarri's, and Bill Gazzarri's had a birthday coming up. And so he wanted us to, we're one of his favorite bands, he said, and wanted us to play at his, for his birthday. And I think it was 88, 87, 88. Anyway, so he said to me, he said, hey, can you guys, he wanted us to play New York, New York, right? So we did a crazy version of that. But then he said, yeah, if you guys could play like a 50s type song. And I'm like, 50s type song? So I started thinking about it, and I thought, okay, well, punk rock like Sex Pistols songs, they were like sped up 50s style, and the Misfits were too, and a lot of those, the Ramones definitely, a lot of those original punk bands were just kind of overdriven 50s song riffs. And so I started working on something, and we played it for his birthday. He loved it. It became a very popular song when we would play live because the crowd would sing along to it. And you're not going to hear much of the song because I don't want people to have to spend 5 minutes on here listening to the song. So I just did the pre-chorus or the chorus, and then the solo where you can hear the actual guitar tone. Okay, so let's see here. Can you hear that?
Turn it up.
Is it coming through?
Vaguely. Yeah, I need to turn it up. There you go.
There you go. You're tearing that thing up, brother.
What's that?
Oh, man.
All right, so
Dude, you're shredding on that
Right
thing.
on, bro.
Yeah, I mean
Nice.
That guitar just has something about it, you know. And I don't know how it translated through the speaker on the iPad, but it's this guitar's always sounded great, you know.
Is that when you had the Floyd floating?
Yes, it's
floating. I can
again.
hear that. Oh yeah,
it's floating again. But if I ever go on the road, I just set it for dive bomb only, so that
it's easier.
I mean, I played all those gigs I played back in the club days. It was all floating.
Yeah.
So I don't know why I'm so kind of paranoid that the tuning's going to shift, or plus I had I think the reason I did it for dive bomb only is because I put a detuna on it,
mm-hmm.
and that won't work floating. Yeah. So, but I took the detuna off, and so I floated it again.
Gotcha.
Floating is pretty fun. So
I've never been one to float my trims, but I've tried it here and there, and it is fun. Some people can't live without it, but
yeah. And the thing is, if I'm playing a gig, it's always with fresh strings. And, through the course of an hour and a half or whatever show, you're not really going to pop a string most of the time.
Yeah.
So, but when I was out playing with Bar 7, I really didn't have any solos where I needed to pull up on it, So, and one other thing here, I'll give you a little bit of this, of the showing it in action. We'll just do a short thing here. So you'll see the guitar, and this was a guitar competition thing in LA. Okay, so here we go. I don't know if you can see that or not. No, I'll go like that.
Right. Oh.
Damn, Ray, you're shredding the hell out of that guitar, brother.
Thanks. Yeah.
My goodness, bro.
That's 1985.
Did you? I need to ask. Did you have who are your influences? Did you have any influences from Randy?
I'll be right back, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, because I hear some. It almost at times it's like a cross between Randy and Ed and some other.
Those were my top two influences.
That's what I can hear for sure. That's awesome.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, so even in like that song, a lot of that was influenced by Randy Rhoads, a lot of that stuff, and Ed. I mean, those were the dudes, Yeah. I loved the other guys too, like Michael Schenker and Gary Moore and tons of other players, but Ed and Randy were the main ones,
That is awesome. Hey, Zach Thongs, good to see you, brother. Right on, bro. Oh man, Ray, are you still in touch with any of your old bandmates?
Yeah,
When's the reunion tour, and when you come into Charlotte? That was my next question.
Oh, I don't know. We didn't talk about that, but yeah, I just saw the. I'm going actually this Thursday to see in bar 7, Tommy, who is the other guitar player in bar 7, Tommy Schio from Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
So he's playing in at the Whiskey on Thursday night. So I'll be down there for that.
That's awesome. That is so cool.
And then I went to the Tesla, just played here last week, and I went and saw Jeff and all those guys. You know, I've known those guys forever. So
Sure.
Nice.
yeah, it was great seeing them.
Tell Tommy if you can. This guy Sean Hayes he commissioned a copy of his Kramer with the Voyager, and I worked with him and studied and you know, I just tell him that I'm hoping he gets that thing back sometime because it's a cool guitar and it should be preserved.
Yeah, I'll tell him. I'm gonna see him Thursday night, or I'm gonna see him. I'm gonna be there at Load In because he's got a. I don't think he'll need the help, but he's got an amp. It's a fly-in day, so they're providing him with an amp head, and sometimes, you know, when you do fly-in dates, like even I had some issues with fly-in dates for them. You know, you ask for one thing and you get something else, and sometimes it's not exactly what you're looking for. And so I'm sure they'll get him something great, you know what I mean? But I'm just going to go down there to kind of, if he needs help him out, or if he needs to try a couple things, you know, to tell him if it sounds great or if it sounds, you know, something needs to change. But because, you know, if you're sound checking, sometimes it's going to sound a little different coming through the PA, you know? And so, but I'm going to see him Thursday and Saturday night. Saturday night's up here in Sacramento. So I'll be at both of those.
Nice.
Yeah.
I just happened to have built thank you. I just happened to have built for a different guy, totally unrelated, a Kramer, like banana heads or, you know, hockey stick headstock, Holy Grail, which is what he had on that guitar with but every little detail, the veneer fretboard, everything about it was exact. And that's the same thing I did when I built.
Did you take pictures of that?
Of the one I did, that the replica of his? Yeah. I did.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah, I'll send some. I didn't like paint it or anything, but that was what was being done to it. It was being painted just like his.
Hey, man.
But I'll send you pictures if I can find it of that body and neck that I made, and I'll also send you a picture of the one I just made a couple days ago. I'm trying to dig through old emails right now and see if I can pull it up, but I'll definitely get some of those pictures.
Yeah.
Right on.
Metalhead hippie in the house. Good to see you, hippie. Right on, bro.
Let me show you this, Donnny.
That's right. So we talked about Schecter and, you know, the different companies, Mighty Might, Boogie Bodies, which later became Warmoth. And all these companies that you could go to get bodies. This was a catalog. I want to say this was 1980, but I don't remember, you know, exactly what year this catalog was. But this shows what was special about Schecter, and that was their unbelievable wood choice. Now, Lynn did a lot of exotics, like, you know, Lynn was doing zebra wood and rosewood and really cool stuff that you know, solid figured maple stuff. Lynn was the originator of that kind of thing, you know, getting a Strat but with figured wood. But Dave took that to the next level, and here's a catalog showing some of the bodies you could get from him. Now these are early, like front loaded. He wasn't doing any rear loaded stuff at this point, or if he was, it was an off the menu item. But look at some of these woods you could get. Right at the top, number 1, ash. You know, that's meaning northern hard ash. That was what you could get. Now these are for bodies. Ash, maple, a solid maple body, and you had some of that in like the you know, the ESP and the later Kramer stuff, or the early Kramer stuff too could have been maple or was maple, like if you got the right one. Walnut bodies is a little out there, but they're beautiful. Oak bodies, you know, people experiment, but now we get into the crazy stuff. Paduke, which is a really nice reddish wood. Zebra wood, like I said, Lynn Ellsworth did some zebra wood. Teak is interesting because teak is a beautiful wood, and my Schecter was teak, but teak annihilates your tools because it has a silica in the wood, and that helps. The reason why teak is used is because, well, not the reason, but one of the major reasons it's used in various applications is because it's impervious to, or practically impervious to, outside environments. So it can get rained on, and it's used in outside furniture sometimes. I actually have a teak, a big teak, like round. I don't think it survived, so I have it sitting around, but I considered chopping it up and making necks out of it and stuff. But I looked into it, and you want to be careful because it'll wreck your tools because of the silica in it. But going down Shedua, I don't remember that. There's some of these woods you see. There are other names for them, or Shedua. I don't know how to pronounce it. Rosewood. I don't know if by this time it's the case, but Dave Schecter was using Brazilian rosewood. Now, I don't know if you ordered it through this catalog, if you would have gotten Indian rosewood or Brazilian or what have you. He was also using something called Hong Kong rosewood, which I've never been able to figure out what that is. But my neck that I had from Schecter is what was called Hong Kong rosewood in some of their other catalogs, and it's beautiful. It almost looks like walnut, but it's like a cross between walnut and koa. Then, of course, you have koa. These days, if you manage to somehow get a solid koa body, that's a $5,000 guitar because it's koa.
Wow.
Koa is an unbelievably expensive wood. And G-Ko, I don't know, honestly. I don't know.
I've never heard of that.
Cocobolo is used in fretboards sometimes, but he was doing Cocobolo bodies, which is just unreal. Like, that's unheard of, too, in addition to koa. But, yeah, I mean, this just shows you, and you can see some of the styles. Look at that middle one, the double cutaway telly, just really interesting. Which that I can't say for certainty, but that style of double cutaway telly, I think probably came from Mike Bloomberg's telly, because later after Mike Bloomberg had it, the next guy that had it, and I don't know how well known this was, but the next guy that had it was a lefty player, and he cut some wood out of it. So maybe it was coincidence, but you know. Really cool shapes. You see the rosewood Peabody bass. P bass, Peabody, P bass body. That looks like it could be Brazilian to me. That rosewood, but solid Brazilian rosewood bass body. I mean, that's unheard of. So
you couldn't get that. It'd be illegal to get that now, wouldn't it?
That's right. Well, yeah, you can. Well, no, you can get it legally, but it's really expensive to get all the paperwork and stuff. But yeah, I mean,
wow,
it is not. It is very hard to import.
Now, interesting enough, Donnny, I don't see the word poplar up there.
That's right. What? Poplar is not really a guitar wood, though. Well, okay. Dan Electro used it on their necks and bodies. Okay. It was a, and you know, that era, 50s, some cheap guitars or cheaply manufactured guitars with the 50s and 60s used it, which might be that it might be why it was avoided by Schecter, is because it was associated with that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you don't see alder on here either. You know?
Or basswood. No, that's something else I was going to say.
Yeah. Basswood came later too, for sure. It wasn't something that people were really doing. It wasn't used in really any applications until Charvel Jackson came along, and the first major one I can think of was what's his name? How am I blanking on his name? Ed loved this guy. Shit. I'm silly for not remembering his name, but he had a basswood guitar commissioned, and you know, it became industry standard. It's probably the most used guitar wood.
What year was that?
1981.
Okay.
And then Ed started experimenting with it at Kramer. Why can I not? It's such a simple name that I'm not being able to remember right now because I'm blanking.
The first basswood guitar I ever even played or knew about or anything was the Gem.
Yeah. So the name came back to me, and now I feel extra stupid. It's Alan Holdsworth. Alan had Charvel make him a bunch of different bodies out of different woods. He had a spruce strat body, which became the white Charvel that he played. The basswood body became the red Charvel that he was playing around that time. and he had a bunch of different ones made, and he was looking for weight and tone, basically. Mm-hmm. And the basswood and the spruce were ones that he liked a lot, and that became industry standard later on. But yeah, I mean, look at some of these woods you could get from Schecter. I mean, unbelievable. People have sent me this catalog and said, "Hey, could I get a Cocobolo Schecter body?" I'm like, I'm sorry, but if you could find the wood and send it to me, I would love to make it, but it's not going to happen.
That's crazy.
What kind of wood is that on the upper left there, Donnny?
That might just be mahogany. I'm not sure. Sometimes it's hard to tell in these photos what's koa and what's not. I can tell you the one on the bottom right is absolutely rosewood, and the one in the middle looks like it could be mahogany. It looks like African mahogany to me. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, the double cutaway telly and the one in the upper left-hand corner seem to be similar wood, don't they?
Yes, they do. That's why I'm kind of thinking that might also be mahogany, because it's kind of got those stripes to it. But sometimes you got to see the wood in the light and see how it kind of dances in the light to say for sure what it is.
Yeah.
The one in the left in the three on the bottom. So there's double cutaway in the Strat rear, or the two humbucker Strat kind of looks like teak to me. It looks a lot like my Schecter. Let me bust that out. It's painted so you can't see it, but it'll kind of show you another perspective of the Schecter situation.
I mean, it looks to me like the one in the upper right.
Yeah.
Has finish on it though, right?
That's right. It looks like it could be like a stained ash too, because it has that kind of grain. I'm just trying to get the junk off this so it looks better than it does. This is my late 70s Schecter Dream Machine. Now, this is not the original neck. I put this on. It's pretty much this is a replica of the Boogie Bodies rosewood fretboard neck that was on the Frank, and the Star for a very brief time before the Dan Electro neck came along. This thing was haggard. When I got it, you can see the they cut the pick guard away. This is the original pick guard, original jack plate, original neck plate, and
Johnny, can we see that neck again? The back of that neck. I caught some. Oh my goodness! Look
it's
at that.
Pretty crazy. I can't even get bird's eye like this anymore. I mean, you can, but it's much harder to get it. I had this piece. I think I made this neck maybe 2 years ago. But I had this neck kicking around, and it's just unbelievable. So
that is crazy.
The sister
profile. Do you call that a soft C?
This is kind of a big C, and it's wide at the nut. That's
an R3 nut.
1 3/4. So
okay.
R5. Now the R designation is specific to the Floyd nuts, and it speaks to the width and the depth and the radius too, because like the R10 is a 15. Our R10 is similar to an R3, but it's like got a 15-inch radius instead of a 10. Okay. So anyway, this would be if I put a Floyd nut on this, it would be an R5, which is quite wide, and that's this one too. This one's kind of like a Boogie Body style, also 1 3/4.
Wow.
Mahogany and rosewood. So anyway, the sister to this piece. This bird's eye piece is I made a neck for Lynn Ellsworth, the zeroed one he showed that I made for him. It just had unbelievable figures, so that was the one for him. Anyway, this was a teak body, and whoever had it routed a huge hole, like just really. You can maybe, if I get it in the right light, you can kind of see the shadow, like the little line around it where I plugged it and put a new piece of wood in to reroute it. So I cleaned it up. This is a Charvel, not Charvel, but distributed by Charvel, Brass Factory, like Mighty Mite Bridge. It's not a real one. It's a one I made replica. And these pickups are coveted. These F500Ts, they're tapped pickups that Dave Schecter and Tom Anderson were making, and they just sound so fucking good. This is a 3-way selector, so you have off in the middle. You have the single coil tap, like the lower power tap tone, and the full power, and you can turn any pickup configuration on. It didn't have the original neck pickup. This is some kind of like blade pickup, but it also is like a humbucker, so it has two powers. You can tap into the coil, so you get all sorts. I think you get 27 combinations of pickups.
Wow.
You could have them all on, on max settings, all on the tap settings, and like mix and match them. You get a really big variety of tones, and some of them are really unbelievable. But that
beautiful guitar, man.
That sort of forearm profile looks the same as Ray's.
Yeah.
And this was this is a real Schecter. Now they varied a bit because of the depth of, but the kind of vibe to the contour was always the same. But they would vary. I've noticed in measuring a couple would vary on how far into the body and how far across they went. And then the rear contour is, I don't know, on yours, Ray, is it steep and straight, or does it kind of have a round over to it like this?
No, it's steep. Check it out.
You don't have any of this going on?
No. Check
okay.
Check this thing.
Okay, yeah.
Oh,
so I have noticed that those rear contours varied too in how flat they were. When I say flat, I mean like, if you put something, I'm trying to reach for something that's like flat. Anyway, if you put something flat on here, it'll rock. So it's kind of rounded like that. Some of them are totally flat, and if you put something flat on it, it stays flat. Some of them are more rounded. But I mean, these old school Schecters are some of like the best guitars, especially when Dave started not just doing bodies, but like assembling the whole guitars and doing his pickguard assemblies and these pickups that Tom Anderson. I don't know how involved Tom was, but Tom has detailed notes on how they were made from his time with Dave Schecter. So they're unbelievable. I'm working on hopefully having some of these recreated to put out into the market, not through me, but through other channels.
Excellent.
So you guys, if you ever get your hands on one of these F500Ts, they're a fortune. But if you ever get your hands on one, they're some of the best. They're the best single coil you can put in a guitar, hands down.
So I have a pickup that Dan Armstrong made me. And I was looking for a pickup that was powerful, but not at the time. A distortion type. This is like an 86 ish, and so the music store I was in said, "Oh well, this guy over here makes pickups," and he was just an old dude sitting over there, and so I was like, "Okay, well, I don't know," and he goes, "Yeah," he goes, "I'll make you a pickup," and so for $100 he made this pickup. It's in some of those shots that I sent you, Tony, and it just looks like a chunk of, I don't know, it's ugly, but it sounded amazing, and I want to get it reverse engineered, you know what I mean, without destroying the pickup. I don't know if they can put an X-ray on it or how they would test it, but because one place said, the only way you can see what it actually is just to destroy it. I'm like, well, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Which one is it, Ray?
Okay. Now my hand is kind of maybe some more of the close-up ones. Maybe my hand's blocking it. Oh, you know what it was? It's on some of the ones that I sent in the state that it's in now. I don't know if you can actually see it because my hand's always in the way on here. But in the one where it's just the guitar and like the amp in front of the amp, you can see it. It still has that pickup in it on some of those. Let me see. Anyway, it's one of the best sounding pickups I've ever had, and I want to get more done from him, but then he passed away, so I couldn't do anything. But it's so great, and I went through a ton of pickups. I went through a bunch of Duncans, and I just wasn't satisfied with what I was getting. Okay, let's see. Okay, there we go. So you see that one?
Mm-hmm.
See that thing?
Oh, yeah, it's like covered, huh?
Yeah, but it's not. That's part of the pickup. It's just like,
like
he dipped it in this ugly,
It looks like an EMG.
It does, but this is like you can like scratch chunks of this off. So I don't know what, like it chips and everything, whatever it is. So it's, you know how AMG is kind of composite.
Sure. Yeah.
This is like stuff that he dipped it in like a mold.
It looks almost like epoxy of some kind or something.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. And it's not in the guitar right now because I'm trying other pickups. But that thing sounds great. If I can ever find someone that knows what they're doing and knows how to kind of test resistance, but also see what size magnet it is without tearing it apart. You know, there's got to be a way to like X-ray it, right?
Sure there is.
Yeah, but I don't know how much it would tell you about. Okay, so yeah, it's tough because you need to know the wire gauge. You need to know how much of it. So you need to know shape of the bobbin. So if it's like a tall bobbin or a nice small one, is it wide? It's probably just a regular humbucker size, but it could be deeper. And is it evenly wound? Is it scatter wound on the bobbin? Is one bobbin have a heavier one than the other? The magnet is important. There's a lot. There's a lot that goes into it, which is the reason I jumped in is because that's why Tom Anderson was such a great resource, because he had handwritten notes that he took in the 70s or 80s when he was working with Dave on all the details of exactly the wind count, how many winds he put of what gauge, then he splits out, and then how many winds of a different, what type of wire, how they process the bobbins, what the bobbins were made from, what the pole pieces were made from. Tom Anderson had all this and gave it to somebody who gave it to me. So I guess what's tough is there are a lot of factors, and reverse engineering it is tough unless you destroy it. So yeah.
I mean, I would even be willing to like destroy a corner of it to see.
Yeah.
But I don't want the whole thing to be ruined, you know?
Yeah.
It's not worth it. It's not worth it, man.
Some sort of X-ray could tell you something. Like it would tell you if one bobbin was like way heavier than the other. Are they like, is it an uneven wind like Seymour Duncan was doing back in the day?
Right.
You could probably somehow figure out the wire gauge, but that's tough because like the difference between a 42 gauge wire and a 43 gauge wire, they're both as thin as hair, and the 43 is thinner. So how do you quantify how much thinner without getting in there and breaking it? And maybe you can caliper it, but like, I don't know.
And this whole thing, like on the bottom side of it or the back of it, it does just look like almost like a school epoxy project. Like you can't see anything. You cannot see any. There's no indication of, it's a mystery.
Does it look like he dipped it?
It looks like he put it in, like maybe he started to pour it and then he set it in and then covered it, because on the bottom or the back of it, it kind of almost like it bowls a little bit, like it was sitting and the stuff started to level out, and it just kind of, there's a little bit of a dip to the center and higher on the sides, So I'll take pictures of it, send it to you guys.
Interesting.
But the thing sounds amazing, and it's super quiet. It's a super quiet pickup, but it's super powerful. And it's one of the best pickups that I've ever had, where, it responds great to overdriven amps, but just rolling the volume off it cleans up crystal clear.
That's the special pickup for sure. So what's special about these single coils on that same note is basically what you're saying about it cleaning up. But these single coils are so hot that they actually kind of sound like humbuckers, but they don't buzz like single coils.
Yeah.
So point being, you get these niche things about a pickup and what makes them tick can really make a difference and make them unique in a way that no other, because most pickups off the shelf are going to be like, it's hotter, or it has a different magnet, or it's got hex poles instead of regular ones.
The best way I could describe this pickup is it's all day Van Halen too.
Yeah, I love that sound.
And I like to mess around and see what other pickups sound like, but then I always end up putting that thing back in,
Yeah.
So, well, I guess I'll just have to be satisfied that I got one.
Absolutely.
I'm sure someone out there could figure it out.
Yeah, I just don't know the process, or who I would even go to, because even like people that have, pickup companies that I've talked to, the ones that I did, they said, oh, we'd have to tear it apart.
Yeah.
And then what if it's the wrong person that you gave it to tear it apart that can't reproduce it? So now you don't have the original one and you can't get the replacement.
Yeah, you're right. You might just have that might just be the holy grail and you're stuck with it.
Yeah.
That's nice.
I'll keep asking. Crazy. Everyone that I run across that starts talking about pickups, I try and plant the seed, and maybe one day they'll go, oh, there is this guy. But, But,
you might find someone who helped Dan Armstrong develop it if you get lucky.
Yeah. You
might find your Tom Anderson.
Maybe he had a partner that helped out, or
or like a hot young assistant.
Yeah, could be.
Work out.
I mean, if that's the case, she's sitting on a gold mine, and I mean that about the pickup.
Yeah.
Right on.
Nice. Hey, Nelson Rodriguez, it's good to see you, brother. Haven't seen you in a while, bro.
Hey, Nelson. So Donnny, are we missing anything about the Bumblebee?
Oh, we didn't talk about its fate, where it ended up. So its fate is that it gets disassembled in 1980 and never played again. However, a very important piece of this puzzle that I suppose is obvious. Years down the line, Ed meets Dimebag Darrell from Pantera, and Dime is a huge Van Halen fan. Vinny's a huge Van Halen fan. They grew up on Van Halen. They lived Van Halen. They're as big Van Halen nuts as we are. They just happen to be in a really, really good metal band. So Ed meets Dime, and he's impressed by him, and they become friends. And then, of course, not long after, first Ed offers to get him a guitar. And he's doing the art series, right? So, like, he personally stripes up all the guitars, and Charvel's spraying them, and then he plays them one show, signs them, and then auctions them off. So he's got a ton of these that he striped himself of all the different colors in unique schemes. Everyone's different.
Right.
So he's got a black and white one, and there's pictures of Dime playing a black and white one backstage. And Dime goes, no, man, it's this one. That's the one I want. So Ed says, all right, we'll get you one just for you. It's going to be a yellow and black one just for you, Dimebag Darrell. And before Charvel can produce the guitar, he's tragically killed on stage. So Ed's in a pretty dark place. I don't want to say that this corrupted his mind to do what he did or what have you. But Ed's in a pretty dark place at this time. It's 2004, 2005. I don't remember when Dime died, but it's around that time.
Right.
And Ed's really struggling. But, he went to there are a few pictures of him at the service with Zakk Wylde. They're taking a drink with their arms around each other, like through each other's arms, taking a shot. And Ed crushes the shot glass. You can see in one picture, he takes a shot and he crushes the glass, and you see the shards, sprinkling off. So when they went to lower that casket down, Ed brought the original Bumblebee because, it's history with Grover and everything. To some degree, it's a negative memory for Ed because it reminds him of the Grover thing. But also knowing how important it was to Dime, for him, it's the perfect thing. He brings it and he lays Dime to rest with that guitar that he loves so much. So the guitar, as of that date, informed by Japanese pictures, these Japanese collectors and magazine people would come in and take photos of all of Ed's collection. The last photo of the guitar is in the late 90s, I think 97, maybe 92, 97, around that time. And it has... let me see if I can pull up the picture while I'm describing it, but I'm going off memory. So it has that one of the melted pickups, I don't think it's the black one because it's like a melted PAF style humbucker, so it's a DiMarzio. But it looks like he Sharpied the pickup black. Like it wasn't black, but he took a Sharpie and Sharpied it. And the pickup ring too. The pickup ring was white and he Sharpied it so to be black. It's got a gold Floyd Rose on it, Schaller era. So this is not any prototype Floyd Rose anymore. That's long gone. It's like a modern Schaller plant original Floyd Rose, but it's gold. And then he has, this is very interesting, the neck on the B when it went in the casket was the Kramer Pacer neck that was on the Frankenstrat. The first Kramer neck he got where he sanded the logo off the headstock, that was on the B when it went down in the casket with Dime.
Oh, wow.
So it was a really intriguing configuration. It makes you wonder what he was doing to the guitar and why he was making these mods. My take is that he just had all these parts laying around and he needed something to put the neck on. So grab the Pacer neck, put it on the B, whatever. And that could have happened in 82 because the B didn't have a neck. The Frank had the Pacer neck in 82, and then eventually he got rid of it for another neck, so it probably went right on the B and stayed on ever since. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's speculation because we were just kind of saying this is when parts moved and around and freed up, so they potentially could have gone on at this time, or maybe they didn't. But you know you follow the neck swaps and everything, and that we know for a fact that's the neck that was on there when it went down in that casket. So that's the final resting place of one of Frankenstrat's necks, or 11 necks with Dime.
Wow. What a story.
And
what a guitar, man.
So, and to add to that, Dimebag and Vinnie Paul used to, before they'd go on stage every night, they'd scream in each other's faces Van Halen.
Yeah.
Like to get pumped up or whatever.
Amp up for the show, yeah.
Yeah. And the last thing, Vinnie Paul said the last thing Dimebag said before he died was Van Halen.
Yeah.
Wow.
Those were his last words.
Yep. Wow. Just getting ready for another show and then tragedy. Yeah. But it shows that how important the band was to them and how to some degree it's like a microcosm of what Van Halen has done for the next generation of musicians.
But, my understanding is that as he was dying with a gunshot wound to the head, he said that.
Really? I wasn't aware of that. I thought it was that they did their thing, they went on stage, and then he was killed.
That could be, but the way I understood it, I was like, oh my God, that's heavy.
Yeah, that would be really fucked.
Yeah.
If that's the case.
Oh,
there, you found it. Oh, yeah, I sent it to you. So this is the config. You can't quite see the rest of the neck, but actually the headstock has black tape all over it to make it look striped. But you can tell it's the Kramer neck. First of all, it has 22 frets, the rounded fretboard extension. And the picture, I couldn't find one to show to Tony, but the picture that shows the headstock, you can see the sanded portion. That's the configuration of the guitar. Look closely at the pickup. You can even see Sharpie marks around the ring on the body. You can see Sharpie marks. Look at the upper horn where the chunk of paint is missing and there's wood exposed. He Sharpied that to cover up.
Wow. Check that out.
So he was, I don't know what he was thinking, but he was Sharpieing a bunch of stuff to like cover it up and make it look more presentable, I guess. But actually around this time, it's funny because the black headstock neck that started on the B all the way back in the beginning and went on the Frank and went on the Snake, its final resting place is on the Snake. But because it was black and he sanded off all the finish except for the headstock, he then went back and Sharpied in to like fill it in and make it look cleaner. So some point in the 80s or 90s, he found a Sharpie and went crazy on all his guitars for whatever reason.
Was there a switch installed on that?
No, but there was a second pot.
What is that?
It's a second pot.
No, but look
oh
at that.
No, yeah, the switch. You're right. Let me look. Hang on. I know what you're talking about.
It's in a weird spot, and
yeah. Here, I'll get Tony the picture.
On the one I just showed?
Yeah.
Oh, are you talking about? Okay, put it back up. I'll explain.
Yeah,
what
it's
that
right
is.
there. It's
the bottom right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what that is? This is really silly, but so when Ed first started playing rear-loaded guitars, he always had the tremolo arm loose, so he would like let it let it swing and rest on the jack, there's not a jack there for it to land on. And that was awkward for him. So what he did is he took this piece of brass tubing, and we see it on a couple guitars, but it's like a piece of brass tubing, maybe an inch long, and he took a screw and screwed it in so that when right where the jack would sit on the top of the guitar, so when the arm would go down, it would hit and stop on that piece of tubing.
Oh.
There's actually a picture of the Megazone where he has it on that. And if you look at the Megazone now, there's a screw hole right in the same spot. And he did it to the Star as well. So there's 3 instances of him doing this, all on guitars that have a side-mounted jack. I said rear-loaded. I meant a side-mounted jack. So there's no jack to stop the arm. So he screwed this brass tubing apparatus to stop it from doing that. But there's another interesting point that you bring up about a switch. I'm sending Tony the picture now. This is from the same like era. I think the picture we're looking at now that we were just looking at is from like 97. The one we're about to look at is from 92. And there is what appears to be a second pot for sure, but maybe even a toggle switch, maybe a 3-way or like a 5-way toggle or some sort of switch in there next to the pot, the main volume pot. Sorry, I'm talking before Tony's pulled it up, so it probably doesn't make sense, but you'll see it in a second. And you wonder when that went in, why it went in. Was it to tone? Was it to tweak things because he was experimenting with the Floyd and all that? Was it to throw people off? Now, by this point, Ed had a strict policy about no one photographs the back of my guitars. This is like 79, 80. Lowe's wasn't allowed to get photos of the back of guitars. No one was allowed to see the backs because it would reveal the magic. So you can see here, there's the main pot where that blue wire is going. And well, the blue wire is the ground wire, but it's going to, it attaches to the back of the main pot. Then we have a second pot, which is something like, it looks like a tone. So like I think there's a cap in that middle lug that's attaching to the back of the pot, and then a wire that goes to the main lug of the volume pot. That's how a tone pot would be wired. And then there's something that I don't know what it is, but it looks like perhaps it's a switch to the right of the main volume pot or something in there. So exactly what's happening there, I'm not sure, but he's got some extra junk going on in the cavity, probably to experiment and tweak the tone he was getting when he was experimenting with the Floyd.
Right.
That looks like a 5-way switch.
It does. Yeah.
Defender 5-way switch, doesn't it?
It looks like the side profile of a 5-way switch jammed between the pot and the wall is what I see.
Yeah, that's
how I would call it.
But so when I say that, I don't know if that's the case because I think a 5-way switch is too deep because obviously the switch isn't coming out of the front of the guitar or we'd see it. And the switch is deep enough that it would be coming out of the back of the cavity if it was, but I don't know. I don't know for sure. It's very hard to tell looking at this picture. So there was something funky going on. We don't know is the ultimate question. What I like is notice how, especially at this time, Ed's spring claws were maxed out. They were screwed all the way into the wall. And he could have just had it at a normal position and had 3 springs, but I think he felt there was a tonal benefit to having it hard screwed all the way in with the springs at tension and looser springs, because then the springs are kind of stretched a bit when you're already going to use it. I think it makes it a smoother action and also potentially gives some sort of resonant tonal benefit because you have the vibrations are going back through the springs, which are taut instead of being loose. But he did that on the Frank at this time, though now it has 3 springs. Back then it had 2. So you see kind of his mind tinkering with different ideas, and you wonder what he was trying to accomplish or if it worked or not. But definitely a mind that never gave up trying to find what he was after.
Wow. That's crazy.
I've got 2 back here.
Yeah, I like building with 2. I almost grabbed, oh yeah, my Schecter's got 2. Here we go. Both of our Schecters got 2 springs. That's all you need.
Yeah. Yep.
Mine's almost maxed out. Not quite, because I don't like it to be super tight, and I'm using 9s, so if I had it all the way maxed out, it would be too hard to engage. But also, I'm a weakling. Okay, if I max it out like Ed's, I'm sure I could get used to it. But I prefer to because when the springs are more stretched and you go to engage it, I feel it's smoother because the springs are already engaged. You're not trying to overcome the act of getting the springs to start stretching.
Right.
pressed, you're just tipping it forward a little more. So just interesting things that happened after the guitar's retirement that we can speculate on, but who knows?
There's also more noise out of a spring when it's not already sprung slightly.
That's right.
When you're going from a dead spring to a sprung, you've got like a coil
like
sound.
A squeak. Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
so it could be that. He did use that foam stuff under the springs on the Frankenstrat, and that had 3 springs. So
Right.
you see him experimenting with different solutions to various problems and seeing what he likes the most. That's what made him special. He did that in music too. He was experimenting in all sorts of ways to accomplish sounds that were in his head, but he needed to get out.
Take care, metalhead hippie. Be well, bro.
Interesting.
Hey, Tony, you're muted.
Sorry.
You're good.
All right. Talking away. Oh, Lord. All right. So, guys, this has been quite fun. Ray and Donnny, goodness.
Ray knows as well as I do. If we get talking, we could go forever and never stop.
Yeah.
Every time he comes over to the shop, we're standing outside in the heat and
Yeah.
the sun trying to figure out, but it just keeps going. There's a lot to talk about.
Last time I was over at Donnie's, we stood out in the sun so long I came home with a severe sunburn on my face.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Shit, I gotta have sunscreen for you or something.
Yeah. I didn't realize it. You don't even notice it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let me mention this, or maybe I did. Today's Michael Anthony's birthday.
Nice.
69.
He's the man.
I
My
think.
goodness.
Yeah.
Michael Sobolewski. Oh, Ray has to tell his story about Michael Anthony.
Oh, yeah. So I went to school in Arcadia as a young boy. And so I started kindergarten when I was 4. And the kindergarten building at Camino Grove Elementary School was kind of almost parallel. I mean, it was kindergarten and first grade. So in that little section of buildings, it was parallel to the back of Michael Anthony's yard that butted up right against that school. So as I grew, became like 9 years old or whatever, me and my friends would be, riding our bikes or skateboards around the neighborhood there. And there was a band rehearsing in that house's garage. Loud music coming out. At the time, this is like 1972 or 73, somewhere in there. So
Snake, possibly?
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking, because by 74, wasn't he in the band already?
Yes.
Yeah, so 72, 73, it had to be Snake, right?
Tony, I just sent you. I sent while Ray tells the story. I sent you a screenshot so people can visualize.
Yeah, so I lived at 925 East Camino Real, and he lived at 1323?
That's right.
1323 8th Street.
Yep.
And then Camino Grove was right there. And,
yeah, he was a couple houses from the intersection of South 8th and Camino Grove.
Yeah. And I lived on Camino Real. So it was just, around the corner. And, of course, at the time, I did not. Yeah. So that first building next to the parking lot, right? You see that first grade roof built, see the parking lot?
Right above the playground area. Yeah.
Yeah. Right above. Okay. So that building is the kindergarten building. And then the one after that, down below it, after that playground, that is first grade. So his house right there, his property, his family's property was right in between it,
Yeah.
Wow.
And so at the time, I didn't. I mean, I would see people come out of that place, but I had no idea who they were. He was older, so. I mean, that's the thing. It's like when I was super young, me and my friend would go down to Venice Beach because we were into skateboarding. I'm talking like 11 years old. And we'd ride a bus down there. And Venice Beach is Dogtown. So that's Tony Alva and Jay Adams and all those guys. So they look like, to me, they look like super old dudes, right? Like, these guys are old, man. I mean, they're great. We worshiped them, they were in the magazines and all that, but they were only like 15, 16. But to me, they seemed, so you can imagine 15, 16, if I'm 9 or 10 and I see someone that just graduated high school, that seems like, shit, he's a full grown adult. He's 18 or whatever, who knows? But so there was no connection. Even then, even after that, when Van Halen came out and Michael Anthony, I went back down to from Northern California because I stayed there through 8th grade, and then I started 9th grade in Northern California at high school. Because in Northern California, high school started in 9th grade, not 10th like it was in LA. And so Michael Anthony, I had no idea that he was a Sobolewski.
Michael Sobolewski, his actual name, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's Michael Anthony Sobolewski, right?
I think so, yeah.
Anthony, his middle name?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until I went back down and my friend across the street, who was like a year or two younger than me, introduced me to his friend. And I can't remember the guy's name. It was the guy that was his brother that was in a band called Cats and Dogs. And I always get that name wrong. Anyway, he said, yeah, this is, what is his name? Anyway, this is so-and-so Sobolewski. And I was like, oh, yeah, nice to meet you. And then he said, this is Michael Anthony's brother from that house up on 8th. And I was like, oh, no way. That's his last name, Sobolewski? So, yeah, small world, man.
Nice.
Very cool. Very
wow.
Cool.
Sorry, we keep keeping you here, man.
It's the year of the Bumblebee, guys. That's all we're saying.
That's it, man. All roads just seem to lead right back to Van Halen.
I felt bad that I was your special guest because I felt like viewers would be going, surprise, we don't know who that is.
Yeah, but when they hear your stories, then they'll be like, "Oh shit, I should know who this guy is."
You're awesome, bro. You are awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
absolutely.
So anyway, I feel pretty lucky with the light, sort of the path my life had taken. Just and you don't even realize it at the time, and then you find out later on things.
Sure.
So anyway,
yeah, wow, that is about that guitar body, man. That is quite compelling, Dave Schecter. Wow.
Hard to ignore,
Yeah,
lots of people lay claim to being involved with that guitar, but what we know by looking at it and the people who are involved in the timeline that we can confirm, plus things like Ray's experience, they all just seem to add up, just like everything added up to the Frankenstrap body being a Schecter Wayne creation. So the history is always deeper than it seems on the surface, and it's always it's very interesting to go down those routes and kind of figure out exactly what really happened.
I was actually trying to see if I could somehow get a hold of Dave and, have him, see if he remembered that incident, and probably not, but to authenticate,
Right.
But someone said to me, they said, well, they're not going to do that because you're going to want to try and sell it for a bunch of money. No, I'm never selling this guitar. I would just like it just for the history of it,
Yep.
Coming from the batch or whatever.
Well, I'll tell you that Paul Unkert, totally different relation to Ed and his era, but Paul Unkert from Kramer has been incredibly helpful in verifying and discussing his involvement. Now, his involvement was different than Dave's. I mean, like Paul was going and meeting Ed in person and saying like, this is what we're going to do. And, Dave. So, and also Dave's much older. Dave's in his 80s. I mean, Dave's probably one of the oldest guys from that era of guitar builders who's still around.
And what's funny is of course, like my dad was in his 30s then. He's in his 80s now.
Yeah.
So he looked like he didn't look that old to me then, but that's so many years ago. It's just, I mean, it would be cool to, but he probably wouldn't remember.
Right.
At the time. I mean, at that time, Van Halen was only important to a few people, because they hadn't even had their second record yet, so no one knew. And but no, it's great.
Yeah.
I love it, and I was happy to find out that what he had told me, lined up.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
That
More
is.
Van Halen history, you guys.
Yeah, good gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, so guys, we are going to wind things down. Let me start by saying to Ray and to Donnny, thank you so much, both of you,
guys
for being
rock.
here tonight. For
Yeah.
the Bumblebee. Yeah.
It's great meeting you guys and hanging out and talking, Sorry, you got to get up soon, right, Tony?
Hey, no worries there. No worries there.
I feel like
This has been fun.
these shows always run as long as possible when I'm on, and I love it.
Yeah. We'll
As
go
long
as
it
long
takes.
as it
Yeah.
takes.
As long as it takes,
Got
you
it.
guys.
It's only
That's
9:30
right.
here, so
Yeah.
I'm still good to go for a while. No, I'm kidding.
This is halftime for you.
Hey, we're rolling into tomorrow, you guys. We're rocking tomorrow.
Yeah.
We're
Let me-
already tomorrow.
You guys are into
Let me
tomorrow.
show everybody what's happening here on the weekend. We do a show on Saturday called Show Me Your Pick, where we show guitar picks and rock memorabilia. This Saturday, we're going to be talking about Izzy Stradlin for episode 153 with special guest Ben Coombs in the house. Brother
Good show.
Ben will come and join us Saturday night. Yeah.
Nice.
We behave on weekday, but we don't always behave on the weekend. So
Now, what does that mean?
You should see what goes on backstage here, you guys.
yeah,
I can't imagine what you're talking about.
join us on the weekend, Ray.
Okay.
We'll have to have you back, dude.
Okay.
This has been fun. Absolutely. All right, so Charles Green, we'll see you on Saturday upcoming. Everybody, leave a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe here if you're not already. We talk Van Halen every single Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll be here again next Tuesday along Any last words there, Charles Green?
Hey guys, just don't forget, this is Halenville. Around here, it doesn't matter if you go north, south, east, or west. Every single road is going to lead you straight to Van Halen. Be well. Have a great week. Rock on.